All right, it is 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the City Council Caucus meeting to order. Our first item on the agenda this evening is accounting policies and procedures and our investment policies. I will turn it over to City Administrator Mark Collier.
Thank you, Mayor. These are going to be municipal orders on the legislative agenda for the next council meeting in July, so July the 7th. What these do are essentially they replace an old 2017 finance memorandum with comprehensive accounting policies as a manual. So there's two items that are going to get updated. That would be the accounting manual and then the investment policy. The accounting manual updates and strengthens the city's financial controls and procedures. We like to think that we are the best of the best in Northern Kentucky as it relates to our financial transparency. So this is another measure that goes to that end. The investment policy, that would be formalizing a conservative, legally compliant approach to investing city funds with safety as the top priority. I did used to be a financial advisor in one of my old lives, so as we're looking at risk assessment for our city, security is number one, liquidity would be number two, and number three would then be growth. So we are just formalizing those two policies. Happy to take any questions. We do have Finance Director Kara Kramer here if there are any technical questions that I can't answer. Yes.
I have a few questions, and I don't know who the best person to answer will be, but I'll just go ahead and ask. Where is the anonymous reporting box located? Do employees know what they need to do to put in a report? Who has access to the box? Like, I'm assuming it's a locked box, I'm guessing it's kind of secure. Who has access to it, and is it within view of other employees? And I do have some other questions, but I'll leave it there for that, because that's all I have about the box.
So yes, we do have a box. It's right in the hallway from Gen Gov to the police department. I believe Mark has the keys to that, so when the auditors come in, they check the box and talk through it.
So it would only be checked once a year at audit, or it would be checked on a regular basis?
That's not something that is in our current, workflows. It's definitely something that may be something that we can add into the accounting manual. A lot of this is happening too because we do have a new auditor that's coming online, so that may be something that we want to add to that.
That's kind of what I figured. That's why I was asking, because I knew it was probably a new procedure, and I just wanted to know what the checking was going to be. Next would be, I realize these policies don't necessarily apply to council members. However, under the political activities section, I wondered if we should make note that it doesn't apply to council members, because there were some things in the rest of the manual that did apply to council members, and where it talked about political activities, obviously council members are going to be involved in political activities. So, because it talks about how, obviously employees can't make contributions and things like that. So that's why I was wondering if, just for clarity purposes, do we need to specifically say that it doesn't apply, that part doesn't apply to council members? And maybe it's not necessary. I just felt like because council members were referred to in other places that maybe we should there. Are we calling to verify all wire transfers before sending? This is a common scam where someone sends fake wire instructions with an invoice. Do we have procedures in place to pick up the phone and actually call?
So I am the only one that can do a wire transfer, and we have to have documentation, and Mark is my backup. So yes, we are verifying with the bank. So not only do I send an email, but then I pick up the phone and call Joni across the street so she knows. And so we have that in place.
but are we calling the person who sent us the wire? So like if you get an invoice from AB Construction and it appears to be from AB Construction, are you also picking up and they send wire instructions, are you also picking up the phone and calling the known person that you normally talk to at AB Construction and say, hey, I just want to verify these wire instructions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we only wire for our investments. So that's the only wire.
Okay, well then that answers it. Never mind.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you weren't paying invoices that way. So, okay. I think you may have answered that previously. And I didn't see that part in the wire transfers, but I don't know that it said that it was only for investment. So that's why I just wanted to verify that. The only other thing was, and this may be in the employee manual, I know that about payroll direct deposit request, another common scam is somebody pretending to be an employee, sending an email saying, hey, please update my direct deposit to this. And I just want to make sure that we, again, are at least picking up the phone, or there's some, paper trail where we're actually talking to the employee and making sure that they wanted, that was their request.
Yes, there is always a check and a verify. So we see all the scams, they happen, we send them to Jim White, and we check and verify.
That's all I had.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Kara.
All right. Next item for discussion, number 2, is mayor council pay. Mr. Hermes, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to be discussing more so the mayor pay portion of it. Diana, I would certainly be happy to give you the floor first if you want to talk about council pay.
You can go on, Mr. Hermes, and speak about the mayor pay. I just thought they would go hand in hand if we're talking about mayor pay and council pay, but go ahead with yours first, please.
Okay, 3 months ago, I sent an email at the request of another council member in a public meeting to provide raw data on the salary survey from 2022 by KLC, the Kentucky League of Cities. In there, we compared the mayor salary in other cities, taking into consideration the paid positions of city staff, as well as the form of government. The spreadsheet looked at the cities with reported salaries for positions of city manager or city administrator, city clerk, city attorney, finance director, economic development director, police chief, fire chief, and public works director. And what we found was that the mayor's salary increases in general as there are more staff members who report to the mayor. At the time, I said I believed it was largely due to the higher level of executive leadership, which is required. And on average, the mayor's salary in those cities that we looked at was between $31,000 and $36,000. So that's more than twice what is paid here in Erlanger. Then there was another spreadsheet that, this was also from KLC data, that looked at cities which had the population between 10,000 and 30,000 residents who were a mayor council style of government and employ a city administrator. There were 15 cities in Kentucky that were similar there. The average salary was more like $49,000, which is more than 3 times what's paid here in Erlanger. So what I had said in this email, this was the email from March 16th, 2026. With the rising demand on the mayor's time, I think it's important and timely for this council to address the salary of the mayor for the future. A change now. Now this is contrary to what I'm saying in the email, but what I'm saying tonight is a change now would take effect in January of 2031. Okay, so this is 2 mayoral elections away. So and I still stand behind where I was before, that I was proposing a $12,000 increase to make the salary $27,000 per year. The rationale continued that the $12,000 is approximately the amount that we saved when we reduced the council size from 12 council members down to 9. So from that point, it sounded like I heard a lot of other ideas, opinions, and options. Some people said the data wasn't recent enough. And some people thought that because there were more paid positions in Erlanger, that the mayor shouldn't be paid as much. And there was a host of other different ideas and options. And I guess my goal for tonight would be to maybe, if we could agree on what it would take, what does council want to look at, or how does council want to evaluate it to decide whether or not we want to address raising the salary of the mayor in 2031. So I'm open to ideas and discussion, and would welcome any ideas.
So I had requested that the mayor send out the ad district salary survey, which is more recent than, and she sent it out last week for all of us to look at. And on page 23, it shows more of like the regional the cities across northern Kentucky. I mean, we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to, some cities downstate that may or may not have similar populations. They may have no industry. We need to make more of an apples to apples comparison. And I don't disagree that the salary is on the lower side. I also think that there's an opportunity to do a slight tweak to council salary as well, using that same detail. Looking regionally, we're not going to compare to the Newports of the world, because that's a commission form of government. And looking at comparable salaries within our region. I think it's page 23 if you guys looked at the document that was sent out. Alexandria doesn't have our population size. They've got growth. And their salary for their mayor and council are higher than ours. So there's definitely some cities around us where we are arguably behind, but that doesn't. We could sit here and say, well, this budget's higher, or we spend, we have a larger police department. I mean, I think we spend more in our PD than the county. So we could nitpick all day about what this marker is that we should be comparing to. And I had sent out an email to everyone about, that I disagreed with the number that was being proposed because it exceeded that of independents that was increased 2 years ago to 25,000, when they have an entirely different runway than we do for growth and future opportunities. So I personally would support 22,000 probably max for the mayor right now, and I'd support a slight increase for council up to 4,800. That would still be below Alexandria, it'd be below Crestview Hills. These are cities that have 6-person mayor council form of government, six-person governing bodies. We're the only folks out there with 9 in the region. But I think it's a small bump. It's $300 and something. But if you look at it, I think it's, again, page 23 of the document that we were provided this year by the ad district. It's fair. It's 7.43% increase for council. 15,000 to 20,000 for the mayor would be a 33% increase. And then 22 would be 46% increase in salary. So that's my 2 cents. And I won't have you guys relive the independence email that I sent, but they bumped their salary to 25, and I think ours should be lower than that. So that's all. Thank you.
There was one thing that I did notice on the ad district survey was that there were a lot of cities that did not report. Florence, Union, Walton, Covington, Bromley, Fairview, Lakeside Park, Park Hills, Ryland Heights, and Fort Thomas weren't a part of that. I mean, I think I would get behind what you're saying completely, but I mean, we're missing, more than a third or about a third of the cities that report in this area. If we could get a more comprehensive list, I mean, that's what I'm kind of thinking is if we can get the data from those 10 other cities and insert it into the data that we've gotten from the ad district, do you think you'd be on board with trying to come up with an average from that point?
I don't think the average is going to help the argument. Just throwing it out there.
Well, then how did you come up with the 20 to 22? I mean,
No, we can add it in there, but I think that the average, Ryland Heights is not a comparable city.
yeah, agreed.
So that was my thought process, was taking those Florence's data is in the.
Union or Walton or
Union
Florence,
has,
maybe.
what, 8,000 residents?
Well,
It's a commission form of government as well, so it wouldn't apply to this conversation. Newport is the largest in this data set, and it's a commission form of government. Covington's is not on this particular page that I was looking at, but it's in the media because they're changing to a council form of government.
Yeah.
So, and their commission salary is going, or their pay is decreasing. And we can look at a comprehensive data set, but it's not, I mean, Fort Thomas would be in there, and Fort Thomas, $75 a year for council. So again, it would hurt any argument to increase the salary.
Okay.
But I'll piece it together if you want this summer. It's not gonna, we need to focus on cities that are comparable budget-wise, potential for growth, and I think that these are some pretty fair numbers to work with, but I welcome any dialogue around the topic.
I definitely appreciate you weighing in on it and, even suggesting some numbers. Thank you.
So I don't have an issue with raises. I just want to make sure we're doing it correctly, looking at the things we have to do, having all the data. We operate under a professional management model. We're led by a full-time CAO, department directors, daily operations. The mayor's role is primarily focused on strategy and representation, not operational. That's the way it was set up. It's an elected position. It can change every 4 years. And I think the ordinance that you proposed, Mr. Hermes, is a good one, but it did set some of those expectations in that, which I think you can't do that. I mean, just in my opinion, for that. Yeah. So I don't have an issue looking at this, and how do we go forward with this? But I guess my question is, what are we allowed to do? So can this be an increase every 2 years, every 4 years? Is this an increase, or is there some KRS that sets this for us?
Statute, you have to set it by, there's a statute, you have to set it by first Monday in May in the year the officer is elected.
Okay.
What's kind of unique for you all is your filing deadline is not the normal, well, whatever, now June, it used to be August, now it's June. So.
We have a primary, so we
Right,
actually,
most cities, you're setting it arguably a month with a filing deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Yours is ironically 15 months, it's about a year before. But
Okay.
That's the statute. I'm assuming that's why Mr. Hermes is referencing 2031.
Okay. I think we can come to that, but we just need to be careful how we're doing that, because when we go to 2031, these seats could change, and we're telling a future council what needs to happen. But if we set this where it occurs at a regular basis, maybe that's something similar like COLA for the, for the employee.
There is a statute that does allow for COLA. 83075, they call it the slang term is the elastic rubber band. It does allow for adjustment. So I'm not familiar if you all do that every year. Do you take the COLA?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you do have a COLA in there that's whatever it is.
But is that for elected officials?
It says in order to equate compensation to mayors and members of the city legislative body, the department shall compute by the second Friday in February of every year the annual increase or decrease in the CPI. And it so just allows you to basically take that COLA increase if you choose,
Okay.
without being subject to that May deadline. Now, that May also applies to council pay as well, so it's across the board.
So just something, it's another way to look at it, but I think we just want to come up with a number that when we're looking at like cities and things like that, and I know we can't look at size is difficult. You got to look at what the structure is, I think, when we're doing that. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that, Mr. Cahill. Just to make sure that everybody's clear on it, and I guess I'm saying this maybe more so for the people that are watching it, council cannot vote themselves a salary increase. So anything that we vote for, mayor or council, is going to be for a council in the future, and we're almost guaranteed that it's not going to be the same people, so just to clarify.
So with whatever legislation, it'd be 2029 for a future council and 2031 for a future mayor. Yep.
So I agree with Mr. Cahill. I think we need to make sure that the legislation reflects that it should be a part-time mayor, that we are led by the people that we have put in the positions to lead the city, because someone can change. We could end up with, like a 21, 22-year-old mayor, and they're not qualified. So as a mayor, do you really want them making all of the decisions without a city administrator with a background in it? I wouldn't. I would like them to advise and find people qualified. But that's my opinion. So I think we're better off having a part-time mayor that puts the qualified people in place. They still get to pick the people. They still get to decide whether or not they're doing the job correctly. They still have all of the control of leading the team. They just don't need to do it in a full-time position. And I also agree that if you have a full-time mayor, you are probably not getting someone who is also more qualified because they have a full-time job. You're probably going to end up with someone who's coming in and just trying to rule the roost without the understanding of what it takes to do so. That's my personal opinion. I actually don't have a problem with raising the salary down the road, because I see what you're saying. I have more of a problem with the concept that the mayor runs everything and it's only about them. I think it needs to be a team. If the team is not qualified to do the job, then the mayor's not doing their job, putting the people in the right place. So that needs to be the main thing that they are looking at, is that they are using their time to put people they trust in positions that they let them do. If they're not doing that, then they're not doing the job. And that's my personal opinion. But I think you're probably right. There probably does need to be a raise within that length of time. But it needs to stay a part-time position. And it needs to be led by the people that they hired, that we agreed is qualified to do the job full-time all the time.
Thank you. Okay, I think I hear you loud and clear that there was something in the ordinance that had said something about sometime in the future we may have a full-time mayor. We'll strike that out and not talk about full-time at all, and just make sure that it's clear in the ordinance that this is the salary for a part-time mayor. So thank you for that. But I don't know if I don't think I agree with you on the mayor being in charge of, putting everybody in place. Right now, by Kentucky law, the mayor can control 5 positions inside city government. I don't think I agree that a new mayor should just come in and wipe out all the people who have been leading, their departments, and then replace them, because you said something to the effect that the mayor needs to spend their time putting people in place that can run the city effectively. I'm probably more of the mindset that, the mayor needs to work with the people who are already here, the people who, especially when there's a lot of, department heads and directors that have a ton of seniority.
I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm saying the mayor picks the people. We've had several positions change since you've been mayor, and several positions change since you've been mayor, and we've all voted on them, meaning they find the person that is qualified, that has their goals, that shares their vision. They get a say already. And you're right, to lead, they need to lead the people that's already here. I think that's the point, is that we need to all agree on a staff that we have the vision for our city all at one time, not one person coming in, working 60 hours a week, putting their nose in stuff that someone else already is taking care of. That's probably more qualified to do that. This is not just about whoever is currently elected. There are cities out there that have dogs as mayors. We don't want that here. We are not saying that we want that here, but what we do want is we want someone in the position that is qualified to run a team and to do so in an effective manner. And if they have to do it all themselves, they're not leading effectively, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you.
I think one of the fears that I have is the more we pay them, the more likely you are to get someone who has that mentality. We need to remember that we're just talking about the salary. We're not talking about what the role actually says or, anything. We're just talking about the salary. But paying someone more comes with that person more likely doing this as their job and not having an potentially outside job. And I don't want to speak for Ms. Fields, but my understanding was we want to still have a full-time city administrator that actually has a background in city or municipal administration, and not a mayor who comes in off the street, has zero experience running a city, and is now trying to tell everyone what to do. And I think that's what I got from it. I wasn't really necessarily taking from what Ms. Fields said that she thought the mayor should change everybody, every 4 years if it's a new mayor. But the more you pay them, the more likely you are to have someone who looks at it, even if the position's not full-time, as a more full-time role, and then takes on, has the potential, I think, to be more of a career politician than a citizen legislator, or a citizen executive. And I personally think we need fewer career politicians in the world in general, not more. So especially for a small municipality, I just don't, and that's originally why I was opposed to the original ordinance, because of the wording of it. I'm not necessarily opposed to the pay increase, but the wording was not acceptable. So, my 2 cents is I'm not opposed to voting on the pay increase as Ms. Records proposed for a future council and mayor, but I would want to see the exact wording. It definitely still needs to explicitly say part-time mayor.
Do you mind if I weigh in on this? So I've stayed out of this conversation because I don't think my opinion matters. However, I do want to call out a couple things. So because this is 2031, it has nothing to do with my life or the amount of money that I make as mayor. But there's been a lot of talk about the doubling of the mayor's salary, and I think it's disingenuous to talk about it in that way, because it's $15,000, and you were increasing or suggesting the increase to $27,000. So not only is that not accurate, but it makes it sound, when you say you're doubling, it makes it sound like it's some extraordinary increase. However, that is not the case. So it's $15,000 currently. When you think about, calculate that out, so if you want to keep it as a part-time mayor, so part-time is about, 20 hours a week? Is that fair? It's $14 an hour, okay? So when we're talking about increasing it to, say, $22,000 or $27,000, in 2031, let's calculate out that hourly rate. So say it's 22,000, and we're dividing by, so it's $21 an hour. So for 2031, however many years out that is. So just to think about it on that level. So the hourly rate, if you're keeping it as a part-time. So 27, you can do the math. Just kind of throw out some facts and numbers. Yep.
I have two comments. Number one, 27,000 would be an 80% increase. So it's not doubling, but it's 80%.
I didn't mean for you. A couple of weeks back, it was talked about that it was doubling the mayor's
I was
salary
just
without
like
using
what the
numbers.
exact percentage was for that. Secondly, if anyone's interested in running for mayor, not in this term, but in the next term, 18 years old and registered to vote. Those are the requirements. You can't be a felon, and the registration is in 2029. Just throwing that out there, 18 years old, registered to vote. Thank you. And it's $50.
It's 21. You had to be 21.
What are they?
It's 21 for.
Is it 21?
18 for council.
Apologies, 21. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, still young, as Mrs. Field said.
And I know some pretty awesome 16-year-olds, so I wouldn't put it past Grace Anfetti.
Just one thing I wanted to point out. I can certainly understand what Mrs. Jasper Lucas is saying. And I feel the same way, that we don't want career politicians here. But I don't think anybody's going to be making a career even at the $27,000 per year. But I mean, I think maybe it would be better to talk about something more like term limits. And I've talked about that before in the past, and I do believe that Mr. Gatlin's told me that we specifically cannot make a rule on that here inside the city, but wishful thinking.
I'm just curious, since you brought it up, what do you think the term limit should be?
I think it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter, and there's no sense talking about it because we can't do it.
I'm just curious.
You could do it as a ballot measure. Yeah. You could. I'm good.
All right. Any other discussion on this riveting topic? Okay, so
Oh, there was one thing that I was going to mention, and that was Mrs. Jasper Lucas. You had said something about the wording or the verbiage or something. Would you be willing to write what you would like it to say?
I just didn't want it to say full-time.
Oh, okay.
That's all. That's the only
Okay.
thing I said that
Oh,
I
yeah, I
didn't
think
like.
Mrs. Field
I think
said that
maybe
too.
Ms. Field said something about, well, I don't know. I just had concerns about it saying that there would be a need for full-time. I just don't think that's appropriate to put, or a possible need in the
Okay.
future. I just don't think that's appropriate to put in an ordinance.
Okay.
That was my only concern. No, I don't need to rewrite it. I just don't want that in there.
I redlined the first one too because it says the average is 45,000, and I think that it's,
Take that
yep.
out.
So
Okay.
that was my recommendation
Thank
as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time on this.
all right. All right. Number 3, front yard fencing amendment. Michelle, do you want to take the floor?
Yes. All right, so this one is really close to my heart. My granddaughter is nonverbal autistic. She's 5, and according to I gave you all handouts with some snapshots of some of the articles that I used to research this with links to them. I'm planning on sending you an email with PDFs. It didn't go through, so I'll follow up with that so you can follow up and look at it a little bit more. According to the National Autism Association, in 2024, 91% of the wandering fatalities were caused by drowning, with an average of 7 children per month that die from wandering away or bolting. That's a huge problem. And according to the National Autism Association, mortality in ASD wandering and elopement from 2011 to 2016, 1 in 68 children in the U.S. have autism. As we all know, it is a growing epidemic. If you've ever been around a child with autism, they are smart in a way you may not anticipate, that they can figure out problems, and you can try your hardest to contain them. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it. So if we could be proactive in creating an easier way for them to go to the Board of Adjustment and get a front yard fence, according to the ADA, the Ohio ADA is already advocating that if they do that route and they go to the Board of Adjustment, it's still already a possibility. But the majority of the children in the family that's going through this, they don't know that already. And so they're so busy being bogged down just trying to take care of daily life, they don't have time to do this. And this puts extra strain on our personnel, because when they go missing, it's our police, it's our fire and rescue that's out sending and searching for them. It's our community that gets devastated when something horrible happens. And as you know, when this discussion first came up, Jenny Dim from Florence was found in a pond after several days of search and rescue. It was pretty devastating, and she was age 9. There have been multiple kids that have wandered off. There's Silas Scherer, who is age 5 in Hart County, Kentucky, who was found deceased after wandering from his home. Paisley and Parker Sandage, age 5, who passed away after wandering into a swimming pool in Florida. In size, tragically drowned in the Ohio River. Mario Myers, 14, was killed by a car after eloping into wandering traffic. I mean, this is an ongoing problem around the country. And there have been other cities who have tried to come up with a way to, we may be one of the first, but we're not the first. And it's going to keep happening. And if we can lead the way with this, we have 275 and 75 right here. We have Dixie Highway. We have multiple swimming pools and ponds and creeks and lakes. This is an ongoing issue. And I think it would be good if we proactively set up a way for someone to, when they fill out for a fence request, and all they would have to do is bring in the doctor's note, and we have a predetermined structure for them to do that. If we do that, we could actually avoid spending a lot more time with search and rescue and time with building and zoning meetings and a lot of extra steps. If it's easier for them to do it, they're more likely to do it, which will save us time. It doesn't cost us anything, and it could save not only the lives, it could save stress for the parents who have chronically stressed related to this, and all of the time related to our search and rescue. So realistically, if someone wanted to do the ADA and go through all the fighting of it, they're going to get it anyway. It's going to be much more timely, more costly, and you can't stop that. It's required. It's a medical requirement. So we should just be ahead of the ball on this one.
Sure. So I did do a little bit of research on this. The federal fair housing law does already require local governments to consider reasonable accommodations for individuals with disabilities. The way that we have this process framed up right now would be that if there is somebody that is actively petitioning for a front yard fence, and that should be the basis of this right now, Erlanger zoning ordinance does not allow any front yard fencing at all. So that's kind of what we're trying to navigate through right now. In this circumstance, if somebody has a petition and wants to do this, there is an administrative review that we have at our disposal right now. The way that works is in conjunction with me, with Jeff, Jack, with PDS, we would review all of the facts and findings to see, does this framework for the federal and state regulations, does this make sense right now? And if the answer is yes, we can easily say very simply, yes, this is a reasonable accommodation, it preempts the zoning codes, and we can say yes to it right now. There is a provision that if, at an administrative level, if we look at the facts that are being presented to us, and we say, you know what, this probably doesn't fit the guidelines, we're going to say no to this. There is a provision where those applicants can then appeal directly to our Board of Adjustment. Now, here's where it gets a little wonky. There is no framework right now for our Board of Adjustment to take in any facts or considerations outside of what is in the ordinance. So they may come up and they may say, here's my doctor's note. Here is why the front fence makes sense for me. And our Board of Adjustment, if they're just looking at the ordinances, they can't take that facts into consideration. They can't look at the doctor's note and say, yes, this makes sense. What I think Ms. Fields may have been referring to, I talked to her briefly today, there is 2 cities in Northern Kentucky right now that do have a legal framework for their Board of Adjustment to essentially consider things outside of the ordinance. That is in Newport, that is in Dayton. I have not talked to their administrators, I have not talked to their council members. I do have those ordinances that I could potentially review, surmise, and then bring to the next meeting. Outside of that, the other option that council potentially would have, which I would not recommend that we go down this path, is just to do a blanket zone change, which would allow front yard fences everywhere. So essentially 3 options that I've researched right now. It would be do nothing, which does allow for a pathway to a front yard fence with an administrative review, provide a legal framework for our BOA to then take in other considerations outside of our zoning ordinance, or do a zone change overall. That's pretty much all I've got. Brandon, I don't know if I missed anything else that you may want to fill in on that.
No, I mean, if you do a zoning ordinance, then it's going to apply to every, the administrative review is going to make people qualify under the ADA or fair housing. You're going to have to be able to show essentially a medical reason. If I were advising a Board of Adjustment and somebody came in with an appeal, I would tell them, here's the standard for ADA, reasonable accommodation, is it unduly burdensome or something? I would tell them what standard they need to be applying. So even if it's not in a city ordinance, I would probably just tell them federal law, just like I would, when we're advising a city. If somebody comes in and makes an FMLA request, I'm going to apply federal law to it. So that's the way I would handle it. So I do think that if you get an application and it goes to BOA, as an attorney, I'm going to want to make sure that hearing is held to where law is followed, whether you've got it in an ordinance or not. Because it is rights under federal law. Now to shoot it, and let's assume they wanted to say no. They would have to show an undue financial administrative burden. I don't really think that's going to fly. I'd be worried about somebody arguing fundamental alteration. I think that if you have legitimate medical proof and there's nothing to contradict it, it's going to be difficult. Now, we've all seen somebody you can get online and get an emotional support sticker to put on your dog. I'm not sure that would be, those aren't issued by a doctor or something. But I think if let's take a child. There's probably a good chance, when I look at what's probably out there extrinsically, if I had to guess, most of those children have an IEP. So let's use that example. There's probably a safety plan in the school district that probably addresses the fact the child may seek to dart off at school. So if as a city attorney, if somebody comes in and says, hey, Erlanger Ellesmere School District has a safety plan for this child, that's why we're wanting to build a fence. I don't know, it's going to be difficult to somehow say no when you've got some governmental review that's already said this child needs to have protections put in place. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but my advice would be, I don't think I'd change your zoning, because I think you're going to have anybody who just wants a front yard fence to put their dog out front is going to ask for it. I would make sure that it's handled and just given out for people that have a true need under the ADA, that it's not because I want the convenience of, I just want to be at my front door and let the dog out. So that would be my recommendation. And I think you're going to find that you're probably not going to have widespread applications, but those who need it will be able to get that, I would assume.
I would argue if 1 in 68 kids in the U.S. have autism, we probably do want widespread applications. That's where we save lives. That's where we save money with the rescue. What if, crazy idea, what if we did allow front yard fences but said no dogs out front? Like, and you say you could only go 10 feet past the front stoop, or something where the majority of the fence is not, and you say it's only this kind, so that way it opens that up. What's the horrible part of that? I mean, I know it's going to...
Enforcement.
Well, I mean, fences are enforced now. That's not really any
Well, I'm
different.
talking about enforcement of the dog in the front yard from 10 feet. Sorry, I'm just...
No, you're on council. That's what
That's where the burden falls on the city, is enforcement.
I was just going to kind of speak to a little bit about, front yard fences are not popular. People really are passionate about not having them. I think I agree with Ms. Reckers that enforcement of the dog thing would be very difficult. My thought was, I do still have a couple questions, and I didn't want to interrupt you if you weren't finished with your thought. Okay. Does the administrative review have any cost involved? So like, let's say I show up here tomorrow and I walk in and I say, hey, I want to put a front yard fence in. And I have my child has an IEP, they have a diagnosis of autism. And then what's the process?
I asked PDS that today. I said, what does this usually look like? I talked to Patrick Denbo. He said in his 8 years, he has not had one. That said, I think probably the way that it would work would be very similar to any type of request that we would get into the city. We contract out with PDS. We contract out with Jack. So I would probably just start that conversation. I do not think that there would be an additional cost of the administrative review.
So what's the cost right now? And I've never put up a fence, so I don't know what the cost is to get a permit for a fence, but there's a cost. So I guess my thought is, I'm not saying we need to take away the cost. If they're putting up a fence, then we need to make sure that it's put up correctly. But I don't want it to be a burden to them because of the extra step of the administrative review. I think whatever the cost is of getting a permit for a fence should be, all-inclusive, I guess, is the right way to say it. The only other thing I was going to say is, could we, in an effort to be proactive about this, create some sort of form that says, I would like to apply for a front yard fence, and then sort of outline, here are the things we need from you, to help them be compliant, because we do want to encourage this when it's appropriate, but we don't want to go as far as changing our ordinance to say we allow all front yard fences. At least I don't. But I think we should be proactive about it, and we should encourage people who are in this situation, parents who are in this situation, to feel comfortable, and it should not be a barrier. Like Ms. Field said, they're already dealing with enough stuff. This should be a simple thing that they should be able to do to protect their child. They have jumped through the hoops of getting their kid an IEP. They have jumped through the hoops of getting their kid a diagnosis. They're taking their kid to therapy. They're taking their kid to the doctor. Their kid might be on medication. I don't want to create one more thing that is going to be a burden to them. I would like to try to make it as easy as we can for them to, comply.
I just wanted to ask the question, well, first, I guess, kind of make a statement. Ms. Fields, I do agree with keeping children safe. Of course, there's been a lot of tragedies, and we don't want that to happen to any other family. I would think it should be on a case-by-case, and also, if you would go and sell your property, it would need to be removed and not just staying up. And if that child has left that residency and moved, it seems like that would have to be removed prior to selling the house, not keep it up indefinitely as well, too, would be just a suggestion.
So I had another thought about like the difficulty of the front yard fence, and community changes as the community changes. And so like back in the old days, we all made cookies and sent them to school, and now you can't do that because peanut butter allergies. It's no different. Things change. It's unfortunate. The traditions change. But if we're no longer baking cookies to send to school because of kids that could possibly die from those cookies, same concept. We could be the ones that are proactively. Society is already going this way. Like, this is a conversations that gets presidents elected. Like, it's going this way. We should be going that way with it. And I know, yeah, it sucks. I always sent cookies with my kids. It sucked when it stopped. Everybody packs peanut butter and jelly. It sucks when it stops. But at some point, if society has changed, it's best to acknowledge that ahead of time.
Just some quick questions. So the administrative review, how would I know that as just somebody off the street?
Yeah, it's a good question, and because PDS is reporting to me that they haven't done it once in 8 years, I don't have the answer to it. I think a reasonable next step from my perspective, maybe just to investigate that process a little bit further. Maybe they already do have a form. Maybe there is, an avenue that we just don't know. We've never communicated because we haven't tried. So I think that's probably a good next step, is for me to investigate further exactly how to answer your question and
What the process is.
what that looks
Then
like.
that determines how long it gets for a determination. That determines if there's a cost, if there's a checklist. Oh, okay, thank you.
Rebecca.
This question's for Mr. Volker, and I don't know if I hate to put you on the spot. So in a situation where there's ADA coverage, how does that, we have a lot of HOAs in Erlanger and covenants, like is that something that could be broken through?
It's not as clear. They could try it, but there's also the argument that you bought there and you agreed. So it's kind of like the HOA can ban political signs, but as a city, we can't ban them, so it's not as clear cut. There's some case, though, that would say they might be subject to it, but it's not as clear. Because again, you're balancing at that point that God-given right to contract. You didn't have to live, when you get your closing, it says, I agree, I'm subject to these recorded restrictions, covenants, and all that, so it's not as clear. And honestly, it's probably going to be more of a battle there because people in the HOA tend to have more, they live there for a reason, basically.
Actually, per KRS 381, they can no longer ban political signs.
Oh, that's right.
It passed in 2023.
Yeah, I forgot they changed that law. I doubt how many of them actually updated their HOA, but yeah.
Well, I doubt they did either, but the people up here know that you can put a political sign there.
Were you getting hate letters in the past from like the HOA president or something saying?
I mean, personally, I just didn't do it, but I will know.
Well, it's odd. You have cities that have like a no-knock list, so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, it's if I'm just going door to door asking for a vote, can I or cannot do it? It's kind of like do it at your own risk. I mean, I'm not sure somebody that said, please don't knock on my door, and you do, and you say, well, I'm here under my First Amendment rights to ask for your vote. I would think you probably have not got that vote. But some people, let's give them credit, they're true to that First Amendment. They're going to knock no matter what, so. I do think, and I represent, represent the school district and stuff. The one thing that is out there, sometimes parents that do have children that have these needs, there are a lot of there is help out there. There are counselors, I would assume if it's, that people would steer them to where they need to go. That's always been my experience.
Okay, so Mark will take a look at. Yep.
If they haven't had any in 8 years, I'm going to say that's probably not happening, so.
All right, so Mark, you'll follow up.
Yep, I'll research that process, figure out what is involved in the administrative review, look at all the forms and appropriate fees and permits to go along with that.
Okay, maybe let's just put this on to the council meeting under old business. Is that cool? Sherry? Just it stays on our radar and we close the loop. All right. Next item up for discussion, number 4, is rules and procedures of meetings for City Council. Ms. Jasper Lucas.
Thank you. Thank you for putting this on the agenda and for printing out the ordinance that I am going to be referring to. I just thought it was easier if everybody had a copy in front of them. So I am making a proposal to amend Chapter 31.06 of our Rules of Procedure regarding the structure of our ad hoc committees and task forces. Specifically, I am proposing the removal of Section D in its entirety and replacing it with a more streamlined, effective standing committee structure that aligns with how our city is currently operating. When we originally established the framework for task forces in 2021, they functioned as I believe the council envisioned. They had clear-cut directives, minimal overlap, and brought tangible benefits to our staff, residents, and businesses. We saw great success with short-term groups like the Cherry Hill Semi-Truck Task Force and with long-term groups like the Parks Task Force. They served a vital purpose. However, over the last 2 years, our operational reality has shifted significantly. Several task forces no longer meet regularly, and staff attendance has dropped. Some meetings have devolved into a single member or the mayor simply reading a static report to the room, resulting in very little active problem-solving or collaborative discussion. Conversely, other meetings draw a heavy presence of staff and the city attorney, but have very low council attendance. Meetings are sometimes scheduled at inconvenient times for council members, and we routinely face scheduling challenges to keep meetings from overlapping. Despite the mayor clarifying on September 17th, 2024 at our caucus meeting that committee chairs are responsible for meeting minutes, confusion remains. Some task force minutes are done by staff while others are done by the task force chair, and minutes are frequently not being completed. The city clerk's template is often ignored and attendee lists are left off of approved minutes. Most importantly, we are routinely violating our own 5-day statutory deadline under the current ordinance. I have attended meetings where the prior meeting's minutes had not been drafted. If we're not going to follow our own rules, we need to change the rules to a system that actually works and benefits everyone. The topics these task forces discuss are still incredibly important, but we need a format that is realistic, properly documented, and respectful of everyone's time. So my proposal solves these issues in 2 practical ways. Absorb general task forces into caucus meetings. We would basically move the ongoing discussions into our regular monthly caucus meetings. That would instantly fix our compliance and scheduling issues. The city clerk, who is the most qualified and logical person for the job, will handle the minutes, and the schedule is a fixed monthly meeting, eliminating any overlap. If a specific staff update is required, it can be scheduled and coordinated ahead of time. Just like tonight, Ms. Kramer was here to talk about the finance policies, and that was a staff member who we coordinated with. And then I would also propose that we establish a permanent standing committee for proven task force groups. Certain topics require a dedicated, continuous focus. I am proposing that we transition the small business task force into a formal permanent standing committee similar to our existing budget committee. The small business task force has consistently run well, maintained a clear goal, and works hand in hand with our dedicated economic development staff to oversee critical business grants. Additionally, Additionally, while the Urban Forest Commission is uniquely established under Chapter 95 of our ordinances and utilizes appointed members, it makes practical sense to explicitly recognize its standing nature within our procedural rules if this body deems that necessary. The exact language that I'm proposing for the new Small Business Standing Committee reads as follows. Small Business Task Force Committee shall be created at the first regular caucus meeting of the members of City Council in each calendar year. This committee shall consist of at least 2 council members, including a chairperson and vice chairperson, who are elected from existing council members, and will meet at least twice a year to review grants awarded, grants in the pipeline, potential need for additional funds to be allocated, and ideas for additional grant opportunities. The chair would work with the city clerk to make sure that we follow all open meetings rules, and minutes would be taken by the chair. The same things would apply as they do for the budget standing committee for that, as far as the minutes and them being needing to be done within 5 days. So this amendment isn't about doing less work for Erlanger. It's about doing our work transparently, efficiently, and in full compliance with our own municipal code. I would welcome your feedback and look forward to discussing how we can make our meeting structures work for everyone. I would propose next steps for this would be to strike through Section D of the existing ordinance and then add similar sections, add sections similar to Section E for small business and urban forestry.
So I want to make sure, I appreciate the wonderful comments you said about the Small Business Task Force. I'm quite proud, thank you. But are you saying that that wouldn't be part of the rotational cadence of caucus meetings, and it would be separate from that? Or would it just, because we meet probably 4 times a year, we talk about, the pipeline, we do a retro in July, and then if there's any, adjustments that need to be made going into the next, the second half of the fiscal year. So that would be done during a regular caucus meeting, right? Or what are you suggesting?
Absolutely. I just didn't want to not have something specific for small business because I still felt like it needed some special attention. However, I would be totally fine with it being discussed intentionally at a caucus meeting quarterly. I'm totally fine with that. I just didn't want to see that missed because I wasn't on council before the task force existed. So I can't say whether or not it was missed or not, but I do feel like there was a lot of value in reviewing those applicants, reviewing the pipeline and discussing whether or not we needed to do any budget amendments to increase the allocation. But I also would be totally fine with that becoming part of, the caucus agenda on a quarterly basis. That means that we don't have challenges of scheduling the meeting. Most council members attend the caucus meetings, which was another reason why I felt like the task forces were becoming a challenge. We were running into issues where we don't want to have 2 task force meetings at the same time, and so there's only so many times during the week that are convenient for people to be there. So that was my reasoning for this. Well, among the other reasons that I listed, but I have no problem with it becoming a regular part. I don't, maybe we put a section in here that says that small business becomes, make sure it goes on our quarterly, is discussed at least quarterly. What are your all's thoughts on that?
I think it's a great idea to rework a little bit of the Small Business Task Force, and of course, we've got the urban forestry, but it was hard trying to book a task force during the regular meeting, then one during caucus, then cancel this one, and one at 5, one at 5:30, and I think one we just had recently was at 2 p.m., so I think incorporating a lot of it during caucus, and everybody can be here and be present, I think is a great idea.
I think it also would be nice for anyone who wants to hear about parks on a more regular cadence, just what's going on, what we're working on, because I can't recall the last time we had a Parks Task Force meeting, but I always found those to be very valuable, and if they were, live streamed for the electorate to hear, I think that there would be value added. I'm just speaking specifically to that one. I think that a lot of people care about what we're doing and where we're spending money. But again, it's more of everyone needs to kind of chime in on their opinions.
Yeah, I mean, Small Business Task Force has been very beneficial. Parks Master Planning Task Force has been extraordinarily beneficial. So I think those two absolutely need to be incorporated into whatever you all do.
I feel like that should be incorporated into the caucus meetings because people are able to attend those. They're at a time when it's convenient. We haven't had a Parks Task Force meeting, so if it's that important, I guess I'm a little bit confused about why we haven't had one. The minutes were frequently not done. The template was not followed. That literally the ordinance says we're supposed to be following. The minutes are supposed to be done within 5 days. They were rarely done. So my point of all of this is we need to follow our own rules, and if we're not going to follow our own rules, then we need to change them. We also had a lot of challenges with who does the minutes. We had a lot of challenges with scheduling. There were also times where we didn't have anything to discuss during a caucus, but we were having task force meetings. So it created a situation where we were running from, one meeting, we were running from a task force meeting to a caucus meeting, and the task force meeting was longer than a caucus meeting. But it's actually easier for residents to probably attend a caucus meeting than it is for them to get to a meeting at 5 o'clock. So I'm trying to create a solution that still allows for the discussion, but also provides a time for the public to come. There was also confusion amongst the public. Sometimes they would show up, they would see, we were having a task force meeting about something, and they would show up thinking they were going to be given the opportunity to talk, and then there wasn't really an opportunity to talk, or maybe they misunderstood what the topic actually was. We had a resident one time show up at a beautification meeting to talk about blight. Well, I understand why he showed up at a beautification to talk about blight, because he thought that was part of beautification. It wasn't necessarily what we said the mission was, but to him, it was. So I just feel like it worked, and, I'm not a person that likes to say we should just keep doing it because that's how we've always done it. If it's not working, then figure out something that will work. And I personally feel like what I've proposed, or even, with what Ms. Reckers has proposed of just maybe absorbing the small business information into a caucus meeting on a quarterly basis. I just didn't want to see that left out because I feel like that is very valuable for council to review. But having it at a committee meeting instead of a caucus meeting actually means that some council members might not even be there. So, and I don't see that there's any reason why we can't discuss the things that we were discussing at the task force meetings in a caucus, especially because there are a lot of times where we don't have that many agenda items.
Okay, so my question would be, how are we putting these things on the caucus agenda?
We would bring them up at the end of the council meeting and say, I would like this to be on the next caucus agenda, just like we do now. Or, if we think of something before the next caucus, we send an email. That's how I've done it. If I think of something that needs to be brought up that maybe I wasn't aware of at the last council meeting, then I would send an email and say, hey, I would like to discuss this. It's not much different than if we have a discussion about parks and we say, okay, in 3 months, we're going to be here with this particular park and we need to discuss the next steps. Mm-hmm. It's not really any different than the conversations we're having now where we're going to talk about the fence thing at our next council meeting. It's just kind of an ongoing conversation about those things. We're just changing the venue in which we're discussing it. We're not discussing it. We're just changing the room and the time.
Mr. Hermes.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I've got a couple things. First, I don't know that it's necessary to remove the language about the ad hoc committees. I think it's still beneficial for, to be able to identify how council members could form an ad hoc committee that's not necessarily the budget committee. I think, if anything, we could probably take out the budget committee portion of it because it's basically the same thing. That it's saying that an ad hoc committee can be created if they want to make it about the budget or whatever, or parks or whatever it might be, that can be done. If we added a section about standing committees, I'm not completely opposed to that. I don't mind everything that Mrs. Jasper Lucas is saying. The problem that we've had in the past with standing committees is, one, the people who are the chair and vice chair aren't necessarily experts, in whatever the committee might be. So, I think that if we were to, in the beginning of a year or the beginning of a term, if the council would be open to discussing what committees we would report on regularly and agree upon that, I think that could be okay. But, one of the things that we brought up was the small business task force. And, Mrs. Reckers is to be credited a lot with the success of that task force because she ran it well and she stayed on top of it, and the meetings were regular, quarterly. And there were actually action items and there were results from it, not just implementing policies and incentives, but also that businesses were utilizing it. So, there's a lot to be said for that. Without Mrs. Reckers at leading that, I don't know that it would be the same, honestly. So I don't think it's fair to say that task force just remains in ad infinitum. I think that's going to be the case with every single task force. It's going to be as strong and successful as the person who's in charge of it. And it's not necessarily the committee, that the name of the standing committee that makes it successful. It's the people who decide to take it under their wing and march forward with it. So that kind of takes me right back to the ad hoc committees, and the task forces. So that's my 2 cents.
I guess I have a question. So are you saying, and forgive me for just trying to understand, so are you saying you want the committees to preside over the caucus meeting, or?
I said,
Because you said a chair and a vice chair, right?
that of the Small Business Task Force.
Okay, but then when Ms. Reckers talked about it going into the caucus meeting, so then you don't want it?
That was a new idea. I'm open to, I also said I was open to discussion.
Okay.
That's what I was proposing, if it was going to stay a task force. If it's going to become a topic on the caucus meeting agenda, then I don't necessarily think that it needs a chairperson. You know, typically, a lot of those meetings were, you know, it was the economic development director who was sort of presenting things. And then if council members had ideas, or, you know, the council members were more there to say, okay, do we need more money? Okay, well, do we have more money? And then to present ideas for additional grant, you know, concepts or programs. So I don't see why it doesn't necessarily have to have a chairperson. I'm just saying, if it were going to be a standing committee, then it needs somebody leading it. But if it's going to become part of the caucus meeting, I don't necessarily think that it does, because it's a discussion amongst all of us. We're all equals, and we would get a list of the same. I've envisioned it as we'd get the same information that we're getting now in the task force meeting, but we all are here and all discuss it, instead of it being a whole separate meeting that the same group of people has to attend. I think, you know, that was the challenge. And I guess I disagree a little bit with what Mr. Hermes said, because some of these task forces were running very well and some of them weren't. And I don't think we need to keep doing what wasn't working. And I'm not saying that the Small Business Task Force needs to exist forever and ever and ever, but I found it personally to be valuable to economic development in Erlanger. And I think that's probably something that we do want to go on for a while. But a future caucus can certainly, or a future council can certainly say, I don't want that anymore, and they can take it out. The budget task force was a standing committee, and it was established, and I guess I was a little bit confused by what you said about that, because it was a standing committee.
No, it's actually listed as an ad hoc budget committee. I think what he
Right,
was
but it's
saying was that
specifically,
there's nothing.
it specifically exists. It's not a task force that has to be created. It specifically exists already in the ordinance. And my understanding was that was the intention from the very beginning, that it would exist and meet if necessary.
Yeah, the original intent of the task forces were for them to be project-based and sunset when they were completed. So if we go all the way back to it's longer than that. It's 2019 when I took office, because we had a Heritage Day task force. I mean, I remember we sat in the conference room, we had Pat Hahn, we had the Historical Society there, and we went through, you know, what changes can we do with the Heritage Day, and that's why we have Summer Send-Off. The Summer Send-Off came out of that task force, and then once Summer Send-Off was, I think, 2 years in, then we disbanded the task force because it was no longer necessary for us to have it, because staff was carrying the torch. And, you know, Ms. Reckers had thrown out the 5K at some point, and, you know, like, that was just part of conversation at that point. So that it was really, the task forces were really supposed to be very project-focused, very specific focused, that then sunsetted once the project or task was completed. And we've had a couple that have kind of transcended the original intent, which is the small business and the Parks Master Planning. I think those have transcended because they were showing results. So we were having momentum. There was, you know, businesses were revitalizing and the parks were being revitalized. So we felt that it was necessary to continue those conversations so it didn't sunset. I mean, there's probably a whole list of task forces that have gone away over time because the project was complete, or there was nothing that was really done with it. So I guess, I mean, really anybody can bring up anything for a topic at a caucus meeting. So that it kind of seems like that's the direction that you are suggesting. If I combine what you are saying and what Ms. Reckers is saying, that you just add these topics into our existing caucus structure so that everybody is here and having the same conversation. Is that accurate?
I would want the discussions that are happening or were happening in task force meetings to now take place in caucus meetings. I think it's very overlapping and duplicative to have a task force meeting and then come to the caucus meeting and have the exact same discussion. Because what was happening was there were decisions being made by people at a task force meeting, and then they were coming to a caucus meeting and saying, here's what we decided, and there was no discussion. And that's what I didn't really like, personally, was that there wasn't really, I mean, if you didn't have the opportunity to go to the meeting, well, you didn't get to have any input in it.
But anything that came out of those task forces, they were all just suggestions to then be put into a budget, which then is then presented to all of council in a budget request.
Right, but then the people who couldn't attend the task force meeting had maybe they had an idea that they wanted in the budget, but they couldn't go to the task force meeting. I feel like it's being very overcomplicated. All I'm saying is, I want the same things to be discussed. I am not devaluing anything that happened in the task forces.
Okay.
But what I am saying is, we were having a lot of conversations in task forces, and then we weren't having those discussions for all of council to hear, or for all the public to hear, or for it to be live streamed so that everybody could hear it. People were confused about what a task force existed for. And I'm not taking away from what task forces have accomplished, but it became very, I can't think of another word than duplicative, where we were, we would go to a task force meeting and maybe no staff members would be there. I don't know why, they just weren't there, even though that was necessary to have their input at a meeting. And then we would hear a report from someone who would just tell us things. There was no discussion, it was telling us. And that's not the point. The point is to have a conversation about what we think beautification looks like, what we think overcoming blight looks like, what we think, fixing things looks like. But I don't feel like a council member shouldn't have any input on that because they couldn't make it to a 5 o'clock meeting. They're already expected to come to 2 7 p.m. meetings, during the month. And then we add all these extra things that if they want to have some input, well, you got to go to this task force meeting. And then you got to tell them what you want. And then the task force chair makes the decision about whether or not they think it's important enough to actually put in the agenda or the minutes. And then it might get brought up and it might not. All of us should have the equal say. And that's all. That's why I'm saying we don't need to keep creating these other silos of, well, communicate here and communicate here and communicate here. Why can't we just communicate in the meeting that already exists that we're supposed to be having discussions in?
So I think there's an opportunity to streamline this. So hypothetically speaking, if there's, every task force has a chair and a co-chair. On the 7th of July, they would say, at the next caucus meeting, Ms. Hoffman, I'd like to have a Parks Master Planning Task Force discussion. And then that adds it to the agenda for that forthcoming caucus meeting so that it's held at 7 p.m. on a night when it's part of the agenda. Like, just similar, we're talking about Jacqueline Drive, it could be talking about Cherry Hill, and it would just be like, Ms. Hoffman, at the next caucus meeting, I would like to talk about the Cherry Hill Task Force meeting, would like to meet, and be added to the agenda. Like, that's what it sounds like to me, that all we want to do is be, one meeting proactive ahead and adding those task forces topics to the forthcoming agenda. Like in July, we'll want to do a retro. If we don't want to have it at 5:30 to talk about small business, we can add it to if we have a July caucus meeting, we could add it to the July caucus meeting and have it at 7.
Okay, so the chair would say they want to have that meeting, and then who's creating the agenda items, I guess, is what,
The chair. The only, I would say, downside to this would be if we're not having a small business task force on said July Tuesday at 5:30, then Mr. Eads is coming to a 7 PM meeting. That's the downside to it, right? So, but it at least has where, or anybody could, I mean, arguably call. Give us a report. And that puts it on the record, and there's minutes that go with it. I think it would meet all of those. It would, I don't know, just an idea.
what do you mean give you a report? Because you do get reports from all the department heads.
I understand that. I'm saying like the report that we get at the Small Business Task Force is like, here's all the grants that we've awarded, and it's like a over time thing. That's not a report that we get monthly. That is a separate report that we typically have only reviewed in the Small Business Task Force. That's all I was meaning. Was, yeah, we get department reports. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about specific to that particular topic. So Ms. Nicely's had her hand up for a while.
Sorry.
I think a lot of it is transparency, and even if we just do them for discussion, we know we're here on caucus meetings on the third Tuesday, and sometimes we're here and we're finished in 5 or 10 minutes, and we're already here at 7. So instead of having extra meetings, because I know I was part of the beautification, and the department heads were not coming anymore, and we didn't need just their report read to us. And I know I was required to submit my minutes, or other task force, they were not required to submit their task force meetings. So, and I know a lot of people work, and it might have been hard for them to get here at 5 or 5:30. So do we even have to have a formal task force? But if we want to have updates on what's going on with parks, beautification, keep it transparent for the public and all of council, just so if somebody asks us, oh, what's going on in Dixie Highway? I don't know. I might find out next week or find out on Facebook or link. That's how council's finding things out, where it should be brought up in these, even if we just have to put an agenda item on the caucus, like what's going on with parks, what's going on with beautification, just to inform all of us and the public as well, I think would be a great idea. Thanks.
Mr. Hermes.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I think there's probably a way this could work, but where I kind of foresee things going goes back to an issue that we were having in the past with standing meetings. Is, you know, it was giving the legislative body the impression that they had executive authority. And that's where I kind of see this going again, you know, okay, well, I would like to talk about the Parks Task Force at the next meeting, so I need Kevin Quinn to show up at this meeting so that he can give us a report. Okay, you can't do that. The legislators can't do that. But I'm just saying, that's where we kind of lead this. Somehow we have to get this worked out between how we call this, who's in charge, and how things are met. So we are legislators, and as a legislator, your duty would be to go ahead and draft what you think this should look like. I don't know how much more we need to talk about it tonight. Go ahead and come up with your idea, write it down, and let us review it.
A copy of what you proposed and that you could email out to us?
In my talk, I specifically said exactly what I was proposing. I'm not sure why Mr. Hermes was confused.
Well, we were just wondering if you could email it out to us.
I certainly can, but I wanted to discuss it before we came up with the final version.
Okay.
That's why I'm discussing it. I have no executive authority. I completely recognize that. I never said this staff member needs to be at this meeting.
Somebody had just said, I don't remember who it said.
I said we would coordinate with staff if there was something that they needed to address, just like Ms. Kramer was coordinated with tonight to present something specific to her department.
But somebody had taken issue that department heads or directors weren't showing up at these task forces.
Well, they were showing up at some and not others. But I specifically said, in my proposal, strike through Section D of the current ordinance and add sections similar to Section E for small business and urban forestry. That was just my idea. Obviously, we've had a lot of other great discussion tonight about alternative options. That's why I didn't draft anything. I'm happy to draft whatever we decide we want, but this is a collaborative group, at least it's supposed to be, and we are all equals. None of the 9 of us have executive authority, nor have I ever pretended to, no matter what you insinuate. So I'm happy to draft something from what I think is the best idea, but I wanted to have everyone's input on that.
Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, I wasn't saying anything derogatory to our department heads. I had just heard, and it might not be true, that they were told by the mayor not to come to the beautification task force that we had, but they were asked to come by the mayor to the Parks Task Force. So that's the information I was going off of, and it just seemed odd that they were coming to both task force. Then all of a sudden, I was required to be the only one submitting my own minutes, and there was no department heads all of a sudden showing up at beautification. I just wanted that to be out there. I wasn't saying anything negative to department heads by no means.
Yes.
So I wanted to reply to the department heads not being here in council. They historically always were. That's a new occurrence that they're not. I think it's, with the conversations we've had recently about open records, we wouldn't have as many open records requests if it was all stated in council chambers instead of emails directly to us. It's not just our right to know that information, it's the community's right to know that information. And what I don't understand is, why do you assume we're not going to agree with you? Like, if everything's great, like, yeah, but I'm saying, based off what you just said, there is an assumption that we're not going to agree with you. And there's a lot of times that we do agree, but we're not ever given a chance to agree because it's just assumed we won't. So I think it would be beneficial if you want to decrease the open records request, that they present again. And the same thing with the task force. If it's all for the community, let them see. I mean, I don't see anything negative with that.
All right. I'm sorry. Okay.
Since I've been told that I need to draft whatever it is that I want to propose, are we, just as a straw poll, are we mostly in agreement that we want to add these topics to the caucus meeting agenda on a regular basis? And then if there's something to discuss, we discuss it. If there's not, and then whoever the chairperson is that just a straw poll? Is that, or do we want to continue having extra meetings with the same people so that we have extra work to do? Okay. Okay. And again, I'm happy to draft it. If we want to make changes, we can make changes. Nothing's in stone forever. We're not chiseling the 10 Commandments. Do what? Thank you. I appreciate the conversation and I appreciate the feedback. That's why I wanted to bring it to this body instead of just typing it up and sending it out.
All right. Next item up for discussion, number 5, is parking on Jacqueline Drive. I will turn it over to Mark.
I believe this issue was brought up by a resident at our last council meeting. Just for council's benefit, I had been in touch with, I believe, that resident, but I can't swear to that since I was not here 2 weeks ago. Essentially what they were asking about was parking in the first cul-de-sac on Jacqueline Drive. So I got with our Public Works Director, Kevin Quinn. I asked him to give me a census of Jacqueline. What are we talking about here? Is it abnormal? Is it a normal street? Is it one cul-de-sac? And as you guys probably know, it is not right, or not normal. There are what we would call 4 semi cul-de-sacs and 1 normal cul-de-sac. The resident was saying there's difficulty backing into and out of driveways and around, I guess it's the cul-de-sac that's by her house, reduced maneuverability, and also cited disruption of mail delivery. Public Works reviewed it, and made a recommendation to me that we would really have no change in policy as it relates to dealing with no parking in cul-de-sacs. We allow that right now. We communicated that to the resident. I did tell her that we would be discussing that tonight. So a couple of options that I'm presenting forward for discussion would be option 1 would be just no change at all. That would be continuing to allowing parking in cul-de-sacs. Option 2 would be a targeted restriction on Jacqueline. I think that may be warranted because it's a little bit different than our normal streets. That may look like no parking signs in a specific cul-de-sac addressing the residents' concerns. It could create precedent for similar requests elsewhere, so just keep that in mind too. You could do a citywide cul-de-sac restriction. That might be really tough. We might have a full council chamber, but again, up to council to decide what y'all want to go and talk about next. Or we could do limited restrictions, which would allow parking, but within a certain distance of the radius on one side only in designated marked areas. So just looking at Jacqueline, there's 5 cul-de-sacs there. Those are your options to kind of discuss and talk about what's next.
I think I would definitely advocate for option 2 or a combination of 2 and 5. If you drive Jacqueline, the first cul-de-sac has, I think there needs to be like, whether it's 8 feet off the curb cut or something, that is the most problematic one, I would argue, of all of the cul-de-sacs, or semi-cul-de-sacs, whatever we want to call them, on Jack. The other ones are open. There used to be an island, like the island's not there anymore. It is an open, there's full visibility to anyone making that turn, the next turn, full visibility, the next one, full visibility. It's that top one where you've got vehicle, enters the cul-de-sac, there's vehicles, like you can't see if there's children. It's a very valid concern I deal with at least 6 times a week when I'm driving Jacqueline because I have family there. I think it's a valid concern. I don't know if it's limiting. I'm not a urban planner, right? But there needs to be something that changes, and that's just, I don't live there, but I am a regular Jacqueline driver, and Jacqueline Drive driver. There's a problem. It's a legitimate problem, and I would say that it is very specific to that first cul-de-sac.
So I went back and watched the resident, and I'm not privy to what your email was with her, so maybe there was additional questions in that. But what I heard her concerns were more about children playing and children getting hit. And she did bring up the cul-de-sac thing, which is when I said, maybe we need to talk about that. What I heard her say was that kids were standing behind cars and like coming out from behind a car, and then if a car was flying through the street, then they couldn't see them. My thing was, taking out the cars doesn't fix the problem. The speeding is the problem. And it also is maneuverability, I think, in that very first cul-de-sac more so. My concern was there are so many houses on that street that have very small driveways, no garage or one-car garage. They really do rely on street parking. And I would really hate to take that away from somebody. And then again, I also think if we do take that away, we're just creating a situation where I think some restriction might be okay. But my other question is, don't we also have a rule that you can't park within so many feet of a driveway? 8 feet, okay. So that already exists, therefore, if that already exists, are we enforcing, if we enforced that, maybe we wouldn't have the issue of so many cars in the cul-de-sac, because you shouldn't be parking that close to somebody's driveway anyway. And there's people in those cul-de-sacs with driveways. So
It's like, from when I say visibility, I mean, it's like if you're driving up Jacqueline, you're driving into oncoming traffic because of the lane, that's just the width of the street, you get to the top, maybe, and I don't want to put anyone out, right? Those driveways are actually pretty decent in length, so I don't think that there's an issue where it's a 40-foot setback and you're very.
I'm just thinking of if we look at all of them.
But like when I say visibility, I mean, there's a stop sign that you can barely see because there are cars there. So I don't know if there's an opportunity there to eliminate where a car or two could park that would be less obstructive to that stop sign. I don't know. I think it's a real issue, and some combination. I don't think it needs to be all cul-de-sacs. There was a dialogue around that a couple years ago, and it it did not end well, or it ended well because we didn't implement anything. But this particular one, I think, is problematic.
I'm just going to pile on because I go there every day, still cleaning out a house. The stop sign, like you said, it doesn't get used. Coming around. The parking, there is an obstruction. It's always obstructed. We actually had the obstruction going on Stevenson, but I think we did some focused enforcement, which brought that back away from Stevenson. But you're seeing that same issue because you have people that are not stopping at the stop sign. You can't see the stop sign. You can't see around it. And then people are trying to maneuver around that semi-cul-de-sac, what it is. I think that's part of it that you're seeing also. The speeding is also an issue, and it's not just coming off Stevenson. It's just coming down there. So there is a lot of issues. I think there would probably be okay parking. During the snowstorm, there's people in their yards, but that was a different story. But I think they have opportunities to park if they would do that, but it would be moving stuff around. It would be a little inconvenient, but it might stop a kid from running out between a parked car. I just actually, there was a kid hit my dad's his mailbox tonight, so got taken in by ambulance, so coming down the street. So he's probably on the sidewalk because he didn't want to be on the street, so, but, yeah.
Just to provide a little bit more context that I had forgotten, in the semi-cul-de-sacs, and I actually asked VOX, is there a better word for it? And they said no, because they don't build them like that anymore. There's 2 stop signs in the middle of the streets, but the other 2 don't have any, so like it's a strange setup. And what I might be hearing is we do have some ordinances that we could probably enforce, maybe looking at a dual targeted enforcement of the ordinance in front of the stop sign as well as speeding may be a good start. What we could potentially also do is I could get with Kevin Quinn and say, okay, this is an anomaly. This is not a normal street. If we were going to go down an option of looking at targeted restrictions for parking that would not penalize everybody on the street, maybe that's a good next step. But would want to hear from council on what's next. Okay.
Sorry, one other question. Is there an option to maybe put up some signs that say reminder, not maybe reminder, but no parking within so many feet of a driveway? I mean, I know it exists in the law, but do people actually know?
I don't know. I mean, obviously it's being infringed upon, so maybe not, or maybe they do. And I do think that Tom's right. The targeted enforcement on Stevenson it started in the same way. We got PD on it, and it's stopped now. So it's not going to stop forever, but I do think it's a good first step.
All right. Last item on the agenda for discussion, number 6, is my mayor address. I'm actually going to take the podium for this one. Do I have clicker access by any chance? Okay. All right. So council, general public, those that are watching at home, I want to begin with some important context. So I have been mayor for 7.5 years. And throughout that time, I have worked every day to make sure that Erlanger is in the news for all the right reasons. I do not publicly tear people down. I do not engage in endless social media tirades. I do not make reckless accusations. I do not assume the worst in people or question their motives without cause. I believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt. I believe in extending grace. And I believe in giving people every reasonable opportunity to reset, move forward, and do better. That is how I have led this city. But grace does not mean silence forever. Restraint does not mean allowing the same behavior to continue unchecked. And protecting the reputation of this city does not mean ignoring the treatment of the people who work every day to serve it. For 5.5 years, many current and former city staff members, along with myself, have endured Ms. Jasper Lucas's behavior and treatment largely in silence. I have not brought this matter into the public conversation before because, quite frankly, I believe her treatment of staff is embarrassing to this city and has the potential to negatively impact our ability to retain and attract talented employees. So I want to be upfront about something. Ms. Jasper Lucas has chosen this path for herself. Through her words, actions, and repeated conduct, she has taught people to be defensive when interacting with her. She has taught employees to second-guess themselves. She has created an environment where staff feel they must operate in a constant state of caution and fear. We live in a zero-sum game. And the reason nothing changes is because these interactions do not begin from a place of good faith. They begin from a place of open hostility and accusations. Staff is not approached as professionals trying to do their jobs. They are treated as though they are hiding something, doing something wrong, or acting with improper motives before a conversation even begins. That kind of approach does not build trust, it destroys it. It does not create transparency, it creates fear, defensiveness, and dysfunction. And no matter how much effort is made to answer, include, explain, or engage, we are repeatedly forced back to square one. This is a cycle of disruption, and it has become a drain on the time, energy, morale, and resources of this city. We are only discussing this publicly now because she refuses to take responsibility for her own actions and refuses to make the appropriate changes. Instead of following the proper chain of command, instead of addressing concerns professionally, and instead of working toward solutions, she chooses to portray herself as a victim while insinuating that the issue is transparency. From her perspective, it's the perfect strategy. Create operational challenges, wear down employees, cause people to question every decision that they make, and then publicly complain about the very problems her own behavior has created. Ms. Jasper Lucas talks about transparency a lot, but I don't believe that she understands the true meaning of the word. The 67-page document that Ms. Jasper Lucas referred to was actually a 4-page memo written by myself with 63 pages of supporting documentation. Thank you. However, the difference between facts and lies in her diatribe last meeting is not always as clear as it should be. What Ms. Jasper Lucas fails to incorporate into her message and subsequent social media rant is the fact that this was not about one email, one report, one disagreement, or one question. It reflected a documented pattern that multiple employees across multiple departments reported was creating operational disruptions, consuming substantial staff time, and negatively impacting workplace morale. I'm now going to read the full memo that was sent out to council members so that you have a clear understanding of this. Ms. Jasper Lucas, you are out of order. I sat and I listened very intently and took notes as you spoke about me in the last meeting. Ms. Jasper Lucas. Do you really need to read this to the people you already know? I am reading this to the public, the people that are watching from home. If you can turn your mic on so that they can also hear the way that you are speaking with me as well. Ms. Jasper Lucas, my goal here is to tell the truth and to not pick and choose the information that I want to.
You're exactly doing that. You're picking and choosing what fits your narrative, and you're not telling the whole story.
Okay, so I'm going to read this full document.
Read.
You have now interrupted me. You are out of order. May I continue? The memo that was received by council members on May 21st. Council members, I need to address an important workplace and organizational matter that has continued to escalate despite prior conversations and requests for professionalism and respect towards city staff. Over an extended period of time, multiple city employees have expressed serious concern regarding direct interactions with Councilwoman Jennifer Jasper Lucas. These interactions have included excessive and repetitive requests, accusatory correspondence, operational inquiries directed at employees who are not subject to the authority or supervision of individual council members, and repeated involvement in administrative and operational matters outside the proper scope of an individual council member's authority under Kentucky law. Additionally, staff have reported that the volume and frequency of requests from Councilwoman Jasper Lucas have become excessive and at times duplicative in nature. In numerous instances, employees have been asked to reproduce information, documents, explanations, or data that had already previously been provided through prior communications, meetings, reports, budget discussions, or council materials. These repeated requests have required staff to divert substantial time and resources away from their primary operational responsibilities in order to continually respond to redundant inquiries. Employees have also expressed concerns regarding unreasonable expectations surrounding response time and the increasingly disrespectful tone directed towards staff when responses are not provided within the timelines dictated by Councilwoman Jasper Lucas. City employees have defined job responsibilities and operational duties that must remain their primary focus. No individual council member has the authority to commandeer staff time, require immediate responses outside established processes, or create ongoing administrative burdens that interfere with the efficient operation of municipal government. Staff members have further expressed concerns regarding intimidation, disruption of operation, and the creation of a hostile and unprofessional work environment. The situation has now reached a level where multiple employees have discussed leaving their positions because of the ongoing nature of these interactions. That is unacceptable. The City of Erlanger has both a legal and operational obligation to maintain an orderly workplace and protect employees from inappropriate conduct that interferes with their duties. Unfortunately, certain interactions and communications from Councilwoman Jasper Lucas have become disruptive to municipal operations and detrimental to employee morale. The City of Erlanger has adopted internal policies establishing clear expectations regarding professionalism, respect, teamwork, cooperation, and workplace conduct. These policies emphasize that city personnel are expected to conduct themselves in a professional and courteous manner, foster cooperation between departments, and maintain standards rooted in respect, accountability, and problem solving. Additionally, the city's workplace harassment and discrimination policies recognize the city's obligation to provide a professional environment where individuals are treated with dignity and respect, and specifically acknowledge that disruptive or harassing conduct by vendors, citizens, or other outside individuals within the workplace will not be tolerated. While members of City Council are not employees of the city, elected officials should nevertheless model and uphold the same standards of professionalism, cooperation, and respect expected of city staff. The communications and conduct outlined in the attached exhibits demonstrate a repeated pattern of interactions that staff members have reported as disruptive, intimidating, disrespectful, and inconsistent with the professional workplace standards the city expects within its organization. The attached exhibits further demonstrate a pattern of excessive and duplicative requests, repeated demands for information that have been previously provided, unreasonable expectations regarding staff response time, accusatory communications directed towards staff, administration, and repeated circumvention of the city's administrative structure despite prior requests to coordinate operational matters through administration. Examples of these communications include statements accusing city leadership and staff of micromanaging city employees, asserting, perhaps if everyone would just do their job, we wouldn't be in this situation, and repeated refusals to follow established communication procedures intended to protect staff workflow and operational consistency. I have previously requested that these behaviors stop and that communication boundaries be respected. Those requests have been ignored. As you know, Erlanger operates under the mayor-council form of government established by KRS Chapter 83A. Pursuant to KRS 83A.130, subsection 3, the mayor is designated as the chief executive and administrative officer of the city and is responsible for the supervision and administration of city operations and personnel. City Council serves a legislative function and may act only through official council action taken at a public meeting and reflected in the record of the body. Neither KRS Chapter 83A nor the city's governmental structure authorizes an individual council member to independently direct staff, supervise employees, conduct ongoing administrative oversight, or involve themselves in day-to-day municipal operations absent duly authorized council action. Kentucky law instead contemplates a separation between legislative functions and executive administration. As recommended by the city attorney, effective immediately, all questions, records, requests, explanations, reports, operational inquiries, staff-related matters, or requests for information from Councilwoman Jennifer Jasper Lucas shall be directed through the mayor or the city attorney, who will coordinate with the appropriate departments as necessary. Councilwoman Jasper Lucas is directed not to communicate directly with city staff regarding administrative and operational matters unless specifically authorized by the mayor. This includes, but is not limited to, open records requests, which are now handled by Gatlin Volker, budgetary requests and questions for financial information, questions regarding city policies, procedures, and operations, legal questions involving ordinances, contracts, or compliance with Kentucky law, requests involving personnel matters, privileged information, or pending litigation. In fulfilling this role, the city attorney will evaluate requests for legal sufficiency, ensure compliance with applicable provisions of the Kentucky Revised Statutes, protect privileged or exempt information where applicable, and coordinate responses in a manner that minimizes disruption to city operations and employees. This directive is issued pursuant to the mayor's executive and supervisory authority under KRS 83A.130 and the city's obligation to ensure the efficient administration of municipal operations and maintain a professional workplace environment for all of our city employees. Please further be advised that this correspondence is being copied to all members of City Council so the full legislative body is aware of the operational concerns necessitating this action and to bring transparency to the ongoing issues impacting city staff and municipal operations. Attached to this memorandum are a few representative examples of the communications referenced above, so that the concerns outlined herein are fully documented and supported by the written record. Any continued attempts to interfere with staff operations, circumvent this communication structure, or direct employees outside the authority established under Kentucky law will be addressed through the appropriate channels, including any remedial actions available to the city. Respectfully, Mayor Fetty. So before I respond to the specific questions raised by Ms. Jasper Lucas at our last meeting, which I will get to all of them, I believe it is important to address the broader issue so that the public has a complete and accurate understanding of the facts. At the June meeting, statements were made suggesting that information was being withheld from a council member, that questions were going unanswered, and that the city may somehow be lacking transparency or calling mine and staff's character into question. Those are serious allegations. After hearing the full 4-page memo, I hope you can see clearly that Ms. Jasper Lucas carefully crafted her narrative to suit her agenda, omitting the most critical parts. Over the last few weeks, the public has heard a narrative suggesting that a council member simply asked questions and somehow was denied information. That narrative is inaccurate. And because the public deserves actual transparency, I would like to walk through the facts. Let's begin with what is not in dispute. Council members have the right to ask questions, have the responsibility to exercise oversight, and should seek information before making any decision that affects taxpayers. No one disputes that. In fact, I welcome questions. Questions make better government, they lead to discussion, they lead to accountability, and they lead to better decisions overall. So if this issue were simply about questions, there would be no memo, there would be no documentation, there would be no reason to be having this discussion right here, right now. But that's not the truth. The memo was created out of a desperation for the toxic pattern that has existed for years to stop. The pattern that has been documented and has been experienced by employees across multiple departments. A pattern that has consumed tens of thousands of dollars of taxpayer-funded staff time and that has repeatedly disrupted city operations. And a pattern that, despite years of effort, has produced little meaningful benefit for the city of Erlanger. The public has heard the phrase legislative oversight repeatedly. Let's examine that. Legislative oversight is intended to identify problems, to improve operations, to strengthen accountability, and is intended to protect taxpayers. The question I would ask the public tonight is simple. After years of accusations, investigations, records requests, emails, follow-up emails, reports, repeated inquiries, what has actually been uncovered and accomplished? Remarkably little. Yet the cost has been substantial because every one of those requests requires staff time. Every report, every historical analysis, every repeated inquiry, every follow-up requires staff time. And that time is not free. That time is paid for by the taxpayers of Erlanger. Now, let's talk about the employees, because they are the ones that have carried the weight of this pattern. They have experienced years of repeated questions, follow-ups, accusations, insinuations, and a tone that is often hostile, accusatory, and demeaning. They have experienced requests and demands that arrive during evenings, weekends, holidays, vacations, and time that should be belonging to their families. They have spent countless hours responding to issues that have already been answered, explained, or documented. And again, this is not about one question, or one email, or one disagreement. This is about the cumulative effect of a pattern that has worn people down. Our previous city administrator was treated so poorly over the course of many years that ultimately this treatment contributed to his decision that he was done working for this city. We had another staff member who was treated so poorly during an in-person interaction with Ms. Jasper Lucas that they were prepared to quit immediately after. These are not small things. These are warning signs. This kind of tone matters. This kind of behavior has consequences. It shows a complete disregard for basic decency, professionalism, and humanity. I need the public to understand what our staff has been expected to endure in private, behind closed doors, and over the course of many years. Our staff members are not political opponents. They are public servants. They are the people who answer the phones, process records, prepare budgets, manage projects, maintain our roads, protect our residents, and keep this city operating every single day. As mayor, I have a responsibility to protect them, not because they cannot do their job, but because they should not have to do their jobs under constant hostility, accusation, and disrespect. They deserve the same dignity, professionalism, and respect that every employee deserves in any workplace. The memo was not issued to silence anyone. It was issued because this city has an obligation to protect its employees, preserve a professional workplace, and ensure that city operations continue to function effectively. Now, let's talk about transparency. Transparency has been referenced frequently throughout this conversation. But transparency is not simply asking questions. Transparency also requires honesty about the answers that you have been provided. Transparency requires acknowledging information when it has been received. Transparency requires accepting facts even when those facts do not support your preferred conclusion. The records show answers were provided, reports were distributed, explanations were given, FAQs were created, budget responses were issued, yet many of the same questions continue to be presented publicly as though they have never been answered. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not a transparency issue. That is a credibility issue. Disagreeing with an answer does not mean that the answer was never provided. Rejecting an answer does not make it disappear. And repeating a question after it has already been answered does not transform that into oversight. At some point, we have to evaluate actions based on results. And after reviewing years of communication, years of requests, years of allegation, and years of disruption, I believe the evidence speaks for itself. The issue before us has never been whether information should be provided. The issue has been whether taxpayer-funded resources should be redirected indefinitely to fulfilling Ms. Jasper Lucas's endless requests and pursuing the same matters over and over again after answers have already been provided. The issue has been whether employees deserve reasonable boundaries. The issue has been whether city government can continue to operate efficiently while respecting both transparency and the people who make this organization function. That is why the communication protocol was implemented within the memo, and that's why the memo was issued, and that's why I stand by both. You can click through to the third, please. Thank you. On April 23rd, in response to an email that was sent to Mark Collier about email responses to Ms. Jasper Lucas, Mr. Collier emailed, "No, emails do not require prior review by the mayor before a response is sent. That said, I am asking that staff responses be coordinated through me to ensure we are using staff time effectively and providing consistent, accurate information. Going forward, I will serve as your primary point of contact. If something needs staff input, I will work with them and get you a response. If you have suggestions related to policy, process, or the why behind how something is done, those should be directed to the mayor in her role as the executive authority. I'm always willing to talk through questions or concerns directly. In my expertise, a quick conversation is often more productive than a long email chain, and it helps avoid misinterpretation on both sides. My goal is to keep things moving, support staff in doing their jobs, and make sure that you have the information that you need. Always happy to have a conversation with you." Seems pretty simple and very helpful. Mark was completely ignored. Then on May 1st, in a different email string, Mr. Collier reminded Ms. Jasper Lucas, as a reminder, please continue routing operational requests through me so I can coordinate with the appropriate departments. You can scroll up. Thank you. Ms. Jasper Lucas's response to Mr. Collier, our city administrator, was, as a reminder, I was not elected by you, nor do I report to you. I was elected by and report to the taxpayers of Erlanger. If you and the mayor want to continue to micromanage the city department heads and staff, that's your problem. And it is certainly extremely inefficient. I will continue to send my questions to the most logical person. If it's a question about a street sign and it's an issue that has already been reported to Public Works and they have not responded, then I will send the question to Public Works and ask them, why have they not responded? If you and the mayor feel the need to put yourselves in the middle of that, that's up to you. I will gladly CC you, but I will not solely contact you about everything. Perhaps if everyone would just do their job, we wouldn't be in this situation. And perhaps if the mayor didn't feel the need to control absolutely everything about the city and micromanage the city employees, we wouldn't be in this situation. But here we are. Again, Mr. Collier is the city administrator and is in charge of the city operations. He had recognized a significant amount of time being spent across all departments on Ms. Jasper Lucas's requests, not to mention the tone and tenor of the emails. He was simply asking her to follow a chain of command that would be typical in any business or professional environment. Once his request was shot down with such vigor, it became clear that the executive authority of the city needed to take steps to protect our operation and our work environment. We have also communicated with our insurance company, the Kentucky League of Cities, to make sure that our administration is handling this difficult situation in a proper way to protect our city. We are following their guidance as well as the guidance of our city attorney. I have personally raised concerns regarding Ms. Jasper Lucas's tone and treatment of staff, including an incident on October 1st, 2024, prior to our council meeting. The treatment of the staff member mentioned earlier was so inappropriate and severe that the employee wanted to quit their job on the spot. Ms. Jasper Lucas later sent an apology email to that staff member. Since this memo has come out, she has apologized to all of our department heads. My question is, how many apologies must be made before the behavior changes? And this pattern does not stop with staff. Ms. Jasper Lucas has repeatedly insisted that everything be placed in writing while refusing to participate in regular, professional, human conversations that could resolve concerns before they become conflicts. She stated to me directly, "There is no regular conversation with you. You are not the person I want to have a regular conversation with." That is a revealing statement, because when an elected official refuses ordinary conversation, refuses collegial dialogue, and demands that every interaction be reduced to writing, the purpose is no longer collaboration or transparency. The purpose becomes creating a record to weaponize later. That is not legislative oversight, and that is not good governance. And it is certainly not how we protect staff, solve problems, and move this city forward. Now, because transparency and truth matter, I will once again answer each of the questions that Ms. Jasper Lucas raised at the last meeting. First, regarding the speed hump evaluation report. A digital copy of the report was requested, and administration provided the report electronically. For the benefit of the public and council, we have redistributed the report to all of council. Second, regarding passport services, the city administrator previously explained in an email to Ms. Jasper Lucas on May 12th that the decision to discontinue passport services resulted from an operational review of workloads and staffing priorities. That decision was made administratively as part of normal operations. Regarding the number of passport applications processed during the previous 12 months, that information has now been compiled and is 577. Anecdotally, staff reports that only about 10 to 15% of those applications are actually Erlanger residents. Third, regarding Eons Preserve and the city's relationship with the nonprofit, council, including Ms. Jasper Lucas, was previously provided a written explanation on April 29th, stating very clearly that the city currently has no formal relationship with Eons Preserve. There are no agreements. There are no memorandums of understanding. There are no funding commitments. There are no taxpayer obligations associated with the nonprofit. The city and Eons Preserve are separate entities. At this time, no formal agreement is being drafted because legal counsel has advised that one is not required. After that written explanation was provided, it was still not enough for Ms. Jasper Lucas. On May 4th, she sent additional questions. In response, I worked in coordination with a fellow council member to create an EONS FAQ sheet, which was then emailed to all of council on May 5th. So let's be clear. The questions were answered, the information was provided, the explanation was put into writing, additional follow-up was provided to the entire council. For Ms. Jasper Lucas to continue claiming that she has not received answers is not accurate, and the written record proves otherwise. What is especially troubling is that even after receiving the information, she continues to suggest that something improper has occurred, despite having no factual basis for that insinuation. That is the pattern that I'm talking about. 1 second. That's the pattern that I'm talking about. The answer is given, the documentation is provided, the facts are clear, and yet the implications of wrongdoing continue. At some point, this is no longer about getting information, it is about creating suspicion. And when someone continues to push a false implication after the facts have already been provided, that is the deliberate creation of a narrative designed to damage trust in the people and institutions serving this city. Fourth, regarding whether the city and EONS Preserve are competing for the same grants. The city applies for grants available to municipalities. EONS Preserve, if and when it applies for grants, will apply for those available for nonprofit organizations. Any applications are independently reviewed by the granting agencies, and the city has not diverted funding opportunities to the nonprofit, nor has the nonprofit received any city taxpayer dollars. Fifth, regarding maintenance of EONS Park. The statement that was made that we have spent exponentially more on EONS Park, including trails, parking lots, and trailheads, than on our other parks, is simply inaccurate and extremely disappointing to hear. There have been tremendous investments made in Silver Lake Park, Cahill Commons, Sherborne Park, Misty Creek Park, Train Depot. To date, Silver Lake Park has experienced the most improvement and the most investment. Maintenance has been part of the planning process from the very beginning. Just as we maintain roads, sidewalks, athletic fields, playgrounds, and other public assets, the city will continue to evaluate and budget for the maintenance of city-owned park facilities through the Park Improvement Fund, annual budgets, grants, and future council appropriations. The suggestion that maintenance has not been considered is simply inaccurate. It is disingenuous on the part of Ms. Jasper Lucas to pretend that she hasn't been a part of these conversations for the last 5.5 years as a council member and an active participant of the Parks Master Planning Task Force. She has been involved in the planning and has voted for every single park improvement to date. Sixth, regarding her request for the 8 years of historical park spending. Administration will compile the requested information and provide it when the research has been completed. However, I want to bring something to your attention. Again, Ms. Jasper Lucas has been a part of these decisions for the last 5.5 years. She has access to all this information, and yet she is choosing to occupy my time and staff's time to gather all this information for her benefit. Because this request involves multiple fiscal years, multiple funding sources, grants, operating budgets, capital projects, and individual parks, it requires a significant amount of staff research and verification before it can be presented accurately. This is the perfect example of a request that is duplicative and extremely time-consuming. Whether it be secret recordings of myself and staff, or the rapid-fire questioning, or the time-consuming research projects, or the accusations, Ms. Jasper Lucas isn't necessarily being a watchdog for the residents of Erlanger or doing good for the city that we all love. She is using staff time and resources paid for by the taxpayers of Erlanger, intended to build an arsenal of weapons that can be wielded against the very people that are open and transparently answering the questions to her. Seventh, regarding the Silver Lake Fitness equipment installation. The project was intentionally phased across fiscal years, consistent with how major park projects have been managed throughout the city for many years. The estimated installation cost is approximately $60,000, and the cost has been accounted for in our capital planning process. What I find especially disingenuous about Ms. Jasper Lucas's questioning is that this is not a new, unusual, or unfamiliar process. In fact, this is the same process that was used for the park located within her own neighborhood, as well as many of the parks throughout our city. To suggest that this approach is somehow improper now, when it has been a long-standing and consistent practice, is misleading and creates unnecessary doubt around the process she should already very well understand. Finally, regarding Oxford Court, the city continues to evaluate the matter with the assistance of engineers, legal counsel, insurance representatives, and administration. Certain aspects of the issue involve ongoing claims and potential litigation, so therefore, some information can't be discussed publicly at this time based upon the advice of legal counsel. However, I want to provide some additional context regarding Oxford Court, because this issue has been discussed for several years and deserves to be understood fully. First, I want to be very clear that the residents who brought this concern forward are people that I care deeply for. The residents that brought this concern to our attention have been my friends for a very long time, long before I ran for mayor of the city of Erlanger. When they first brought this issue of street creep to my attention several years ago, it was not ignored. In fact, Peter Glenn, Kevin Quinn, and I spent a significant amount of time investigating the situation, asking questions, and trying to understand what was happening so that we could determine the best path forward. As a result of that work, a large expansion joint was added to Oxford Court approximately 2 years ago to help alleviate and prevent any potential future street creep concerns. At that same time, the residents were also asked to add expansion joints to their garage and sidewalk to provide additional protection for their property. However, throughout this process, the conversation repeatedly shifted. While the concern was presented as a street creep issue, many of the discussions continued to return to the condition and appearance of the street itself, and the request for Oxford Court to be fully reconstructed. I explained then, and I will explain again now, that our roads are prioritized based on condition, need, and available resources. While Oxford Court is an older street, it is not currently in worse condition than a number of our other streets across the city that are ahead of it on the priority list. It would not be appropriate, fair, or responsible for me to move Oxford Court ahead of the other streets simply because residents do not like the way that it looks. Reconstructing a new street would not fix a street creep issue. When the residents continued to raise concerns about street creep, they were advised more than 3 years ago that they could file a claim with the city's insurance company. They did not pursue that option at that time. They have now filed a claim, and our insurance company has been walking through this process. The insurance company retained an engineer, the engineer provided recommendations, and the city has completed the work requested to mitigate any potential future street creep concerns. The residents have also been asked to submit any invoices for expenses that have been occurred related to this matter so that the insurance company can review for possible reimbursement. To date, those invoices have been submitted and the insurance representative is handling them. So these residents were not ignored, they were not dismissed, they were not tossed aside. This issue has been reviewed, investigated, discussed, and acted upon multiple times over several years. What I cannot do, however, is allow a street creep concern to become a way to bypass the city's road prioritization process. Just because someone does not like the appearance of the street does not mean that it is not still functional and should jump ahead of the other roads that are in worse condition and have already been identified as higher priorities. I also want to address the suggestion that $2.5 million per year in road projects is not enough. In my opinion, that assertion is inaccurate. The city of Erlanger makes a tremendous investment in our roads every year, and our commitment exceeds what many other cities are able to dedicate to road improvements. We work closely with our city engineer and contractors to determine how much work can realistically be completed in a fiscal year, whether that work involves milling and overlaying, full concrete reconstruction, or other necessary improvements. Right now, approximately $2.5 million per year has proven to be the amount that allows us to maximize road improvements while still managing the projects responsibly and effectively. This is not as simple as saying that this street is old, so it should be replaced. We have to look at the entire city, the condition of all of our roads, the available funding, the engineering recommendations, and the fairness of the process. I care about the residents of Oxford Court. I care about their property values. I care about their concerns. But I also have a responsibility to every resident in this city to make decisions based on facts, priorities, fairness, and the long-term best interest of Erlanger as a whole. In closing, this has never been about silencing questions. It has never been about avoiding accountability. It has never been about preventing oversight. This is about whether we are going to allow the words transparency and oversight to be used as cover for hostility, accusation, intimidation, and mistreatment of city staff. I will not. As mayor, I will continue to answer legitimate questions, support accountability, support transparency, and I will continue to make sure this city operates in a way that is open, responsible, and worthy of the public's trust. But I will not allow our employees to be bullied, demeaned, harassed, or emotionally worn down under the false banner of public service and the abuse of positional authority. So let me be very clear, as long as I am mayor of the city of Erlanger, I will not stand by while city employees are subjected to mental and emotional abuse. I will not stand by while their professionalism is attacked, their integrity is questioned, their time is consumed, and their morale is damaged by a pattern of hostility that has gone on for far too long. And if anyone believes that protecting our employees from that kind of treatment is wrong, then they need to explain that to the public. They need to explain why they believe city staff should have to endure it. They need to explain why the people who serve this community every single day should be expected to accept a level of disrespect that would never be tolerated in any other workplace. I will not accept it. Our employees deserve better. Our residents deserve a city government that can function without constant disruption. And Erlanger deserves leadership that protects the people doing the work, not leadership that tears them down for political gain. I stand by my memorandum. I stand by my communication protocol. I stand with our city administrator, our department heads, and all of our city staff. And I will continue to stand between them and any behavior that threatens their ability to do their jobs with dignity, professionalism, and respect. This is not retaliation, this is leadership. And this is not silence, this is accountability. And this is how we will continue to keep Erlanger moving forward.
That was a lot to digest. I'm kind of appalled, actually, at the fact that we're allowing this dysfunction to continue. When I say dysfunction, I mean we as elected officials are allowed to disagree on things. And I read through the memo, I read through all of the attachments, and there was a lag time on some of the responses. That would never happen in the private sector. I'll tell you, after 48 hours, there would be a follow-up. That's how it works outside of government and outside of Erlanger. I saw some of the responses, and a lot of times things can get built up. I'm not in any way justifying I'm not getting involved in how someone may interpret how an email, was crafted. I, have witnessed some conversations that have been unsavory, and that's not one-sided by a long shot. I personally was contacted by 3 city employees while I was in Hawaii last year in the rainforest over a particular matter. So when we talk about people being contacted or bothered on vacation, I had 3 people reach out to me personally while I was in the rainforest. I think that using the lectern tonight to talk about harassment and abuse, this is really, really obnoxious, to be honest. And I personally, in 8 years, have seen a decrease in responsiveness. And I don't want to sit here at 9 o'clock at 9:30 at night and pick through what I think the genesis of the issue is. We've had 4 different city administrators in the last 8 years that I've served. So, you know, in it, I feel like sometimes that communication expectation ebbs and flows with the wind. You know, if I almost got T-boned by a skid steer the other day, I texted Kevin Quinn, he immediately responded, no big deal. It didn't require some sort of me going through someone and sending an email. I immediately contacted, hey, we have a vendor that almost T-boned me, I've got children in the car that are screaming. You know, our residents ultimately deserve better than this, guys. And the stuff about eons, those were a lot of these questions, these were no-brainers that they should have been answered. I still don't know why we discontinued the passport program. We funded it in the budget this year. But there are questions that were extremely benign that were in this memo that you issued. And my question, we talk about transparency. Yet this was sent by Jack Gatlin under the veil of privilege with your name on it. Why didn't you just send the memo to us directly? You spent 43 minutes reading it out loud to the electorate. Anyone could have done an open records request to request the memo if they wanted to view it, but it was sent by Jack Gatlin. When we talk about eons, and I'm not trying to Monday morning quarterback all of this stuff, and I'm so glad that we sat down and we knocked out the FAQs on Eons Park. They were necessary. My questions went on 11/20 of last year. I sent a follow-up on 12/1 of last year. I sent a follow-up to Jack Gatlin again on 1/26 to get the questions answered on Eons Park. On 1/28, I finally got the responses. On 1/29 of this year, I said, hey, cascade them to everyone. On 4/29, you sent them, but they weren't. There were like 3 that got scrambled, however you summarized it. So those questions that I had asked did not get properly cascaded when it could have just simply been a copy and paste. And we finally got the public-facing FAQs on 5/4. 11/20 to 5/4. So there was nothing to hide. These were questions that were simple and like, how will PD be used if this land is ours and the rest is owned by this entity, or this is Duke's land? Like, how does, these are valid questions that anyone in the public, that I've been getting inundated with questions from residents about, like, hey, how's this, how are we using our tax dollars with this? People aren't afraid to ask questions. I wasn't afraid to ask questions on 11/20. I tried to get ahead of it. It took 5 months. It shouldn't have to be like that. There's been a decrease in responsiveness. I'm sure it's a fear factor with staff. Everyone's walking on eggshells. Hell, it's been years that I've been walking on eggshells with certain topics and certain things, and we're all here to serve. We're all here. We should all be here for the right reasons, and that's to serve the people of Erlanger. And we've sat through the last 45 minutes having a memo read aloud that if you had just sent it out like you yourself instead of under the veil of privilege, it could have been cascaded to the public a lot sooner than on a Tuesday night at 9:30 at night.
It's already been requested and it's been provided
through an
open records request. So this is not something that was hidden under the veil. I
guess I don't understand why that was necessary to
It was to show unity, that he added information.
Sure, but that information didn't even apply. It was very specific to employees and not elected officials. So this has just been very disappointing. This whole thing is disappointing.
It truly is. I truly agree with you. And unfortunately, this was not my choice. I don't do this. Okay, I don't get up here and have these types of conversations. I don't go onto social media and rant. I don't demean people. I don't. That is not who I am, and that's not who I ever want to be. And unfortunately, we have experienced that consistently, and it has only gotten worse. Yes.
I'm going to respond. Maybe I need to take the lectern. No? Okay. I'll just sit here. I got a lot to respond to. I'm glad you took 43 minutes to campaign for re-election. That was.
No.
Yeah.
Actually,
I'm going to talk. I listened to you. I listened to you bash me and my reputation for 43 minutes. And I am going to defend myself. I appreciate what Ms. Recker said, because this was ridiculous. You read a 4-page memo to people that you already sent it to, as if we can't read. So I'm going to respond, and you can stay there, because now I get to see your face while I'm talking. I don't have to have people text me after the meeting and say, please go back and watch the meeting, so you can see the mayor's rude facial expressions while you're talking.
I just want to let you know that I'm going to take notes as you're speaking, like I did the last time when you were talking.
Okay.
I was taking notes.
Okay, great. You didn't need to. I could have sent you a copy of what I said. But I have never met a person that has as much issues with control as you. The fact that you claim that I don't extend grace, it is literally the core of my belief. Grace. I would like to reset and move forward. Instead, you brought this all back up again. You claim that I embarrass the city and that my presence threatens the ability to recruit and keep good people. Do you know how many former employees of this city have reached out to me over the last 5.5 years and said to me, please don't stop asking questions? A complete stranger came up to me last Thursday night and said, do not stop asking all the questions you're asking. And I said to her, this is exhausting sometimes. There's a lot of times that I want to say, I'm done, because this is exhausting. It is exhausting being the person that residents reach out to when they have questions, and they expect me to ask them, because sometimes they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to do an open records request. So a lot of the information I ask for isn't anything that I've wanted. So for you to say that it's for my benefit is insulting to me, and it's insulting to the residents who have reached out to me with those questions, that have entrusted me to be their voice and ask those things. That's what I'm doing. But your presence has threatened our ability as a city to recruit and keep good people. Ms. Reckers actually just said how many city administrators we've been through since you've been mayor. I'm going to get to Peter Glenn in a minute. You create an environment of fear. Again, how many former employees and residents have reached out to me and said, it is such a toxic environment working here under this mayor. It's very toxic.
Point of order.
This is not a meeting that we do that in.
Okay, then I'm going to request that we adjourn.
No. No. You can leave. You don't have to sit here. You can get up and leave. You don't have to listen to it. I'm going to continue.
The mayor
I am going to continue, Tyson, and you can stop talking.
She provided backup for what
I
she
am
was talking
also
about.
providing
You're just
facts.
making accusations.
What was she doing?
She was providing facts.
I'm going to as well. You aren't giving me the
You're just
opportunity
making
to.
accusations right now.
Okay.
This is
well,
ridiculous.
I've
This is no longer the business of the city. I request we adjourn.
Okay, you can leave, but I've had several people say, please continue. You are able to leave. So there was a lot that was said. I did not demand no personal interaction. Several times when you said that I demanded everything in writing and I refused any personal interaction, and that is absolutely not true. When I was discussing something that I felt like relevant to very important issues, yes, I want it in writing. And I don't know what the problem is with that, but I have never refused personal interaction. There are certain topics that I said, yes, I need this in writing. There were also a lot of times where I was sending an email and I was on vacation and someone said, can we have a phone conversation about this? And I would respond and say, I'm actually on vacation. I actually took a call from Mark Collier last year while I was on vacation. My husband's here and he can attest to that, because I stood on the patio of our condo in Orange Beach because Mark said, I really need to talk to you about something. I don't remember what it was. It wasn't anything super significant, but he wanted to talk to me about it. And I took a call from him while I was on vacation. But there's a lot of times when I'll say, would really prefer for it to be in writing, because I need that. And there's nothing wrong with that. So for you to stand there and say that I'm a bad person and I'm a bad council member because I say I want things in writing, certain things, I think is unfair. Emails sent on weekends and holidays. I have a full-time job. I have 5 kids in my house. I have a husband, I have a mom, I have nieces and nephews. We are all very busy people. Me sending an email on a holiday or a weekend does not mean that I expect a response then. And I have said that in many meetings. The Parks Task Force meetings that you said I participated in, I said that in several meetings. I do not expect responses. Me sending an email doesn't constitute you needing to respond. So saying that I'm a bad person because I send emails on a holiday or weekend, it's really inappropriate.
Just clarity, I didn't call you a bad person.
That was a lot of what you insinuated.
No,
Let's talk
but
about-
we're not insinuating anything.
Let's talk about
I
Peter
didn't
Glenn.
call you a bad person.
Let's talk about our former city administrator. So I actually made some notes about my interactions with him because I thought this might come up. There were 2 specific interactions with him that I had when he worked here, and I wanted to bring this up. So the only 2 times that I recall myself getting upset with Peter Glenn were when he called me about an open records request, which had nothing to do with his role as the city administrator. He called and asked me, number 1, why I was submitting the request, which is not required for me to disclose. He also asked me if this was an open records request that I was submitting for political reasons, also not required for me to disclose. I had not sent the request to him. I had sent it to our custodian of records at the time. And I felt it was very inappropriate for him to be asking me these things for several reasons. It could be viewed as intimidation of a person trying to submit a records request who may not be familiar with what the law does and doesn't require. It had nothing to do with his job. I submitted a very simple open records request. And if it did not meet the criteria, somebody could have just said, this doesn't meet the criteria. Instead, he called and asked me all these questions, which really weren't appropriate for a city administrator to be asking anybody that was submitting an open records request. So, was I frustrated? Yes. I did apologize to him after, because I probably said some things that were unprofessional, and I probably shouldn't have said those things. I own my behavior, and I do apologize, and I don't think there's anything wrong with someone apologizing. You said tonight, how many times does it take for me to apologize to change my behavior? The other employee that you referred to, I was having a rough night that night. I'm not saying that that's an excuse. I was confused about something, and I asked her, and I shouldn't have asked her when I asked her, and I apologized. And she and I have moved on. You might not have. You might decide you want to bring that up again because it fits your narrative of how horrible I am and what a horrible council member I am and how unprofessional I am and how I harass people. It fits that narrative. But unfortunately, it's not true. So that's facts, Mr. Hermes. The only other time that I recall getting upset with Peter Glenn on the phone was when I had questions about an expense in the monthly check register, and I sent an email about it. I believe I didn't pull up the email, but I believe he asked me if he could speak to me about the questions, and I told him I was on vacation and I could not speak on the phone. He proceeded to call me anyway. So I took the phone call. Didn't like that I took the phone call, but you see here that a lot of these issues aren't with my communication, they're with the staff members' communication. And we seem to be going back to a specific staff member, and we seem to be having a lot of delays with communication. Ms. Reckers pointed out a lot of things that have been requested over months of time that were repeatedly asked for. That's not transparency. That's not what it means. You can say the word all you want, but everything that she described about one specific topic is the opposite of that. I'm just curious when, you claimed that that I say things that make staff uncomfortable and things. And I'm curious, Mr. Hermes has said before that we pay firefighters to sleep, and I'm just curious if you see that statement as something that might be upsetting to our staff as well. You don't have to answer that, but that is something that Councilman Hermes has said in the past about our own firefighters. We pay them to sleep. And I'm just curious if that is something that would be upsetting to them. I would never say something like that about any of our staff, nor have I ever said anything about them like that. I'm glad you finally answered the question about the passports. I'm glad you finally sent the speed bump information that I had been requesting for several months. We had been given a paper copy of that had never been emailed to us in the past. I specifically looked through my email before I requested it, and it took approximately 3 emails, and then it was finally sent after I brought it up under new business. It was a simple report that could have been emailed, and it took multiple times asking for it and me bringing it up in a council meeting. The questions that I have about EONs are questions that residents have been asking me. None of them are for my own benefit. They are for the taxpayers' benefits. And there were multiple questions that were not answered in the FAQs. So do not stand there and try to pretend that you have answered all the questions until tonight. Tonight is the first time that you actually answered the questions that I have been asking for almost 2 months at least, and some that have been even asked before that about EONs. So it's not for my benefit. There are no secret recordings. I record meetings. I had a conversation probably over a year ago with Mark Collier about the app that I use to record our meetings. The reason I do it is because it summarizes them. I can go back and easily listen to them. There's no like ulterior motive here for recording things. There's none of that. So don't get up there and say, I'm secretly recording people, because I'm not secretly recording anyone. You did an open records request asking for a copy of the recording, and I gladly sent it immediately. You took up my time, and I didn't mind, because I have the recording on my phone, and I don't mind sending it to you. It's an app. I'm happy to tell you all about it. It summarizes the meeting. It even does minutes for you. You can even search the transcript. The $60,000 Silver Lake install, I never said it was improper to do it that way. I simply asked how much it was going to cost. Never once did I say it was improper to do things that way. All I said was, I would like to know how much the ask is going to be in the future for a future council. Never said it was improper. Do not put words in my mouth. You want to talk about bullying and mental and emotional health? You have no idea the amount of anxiety that I experience before I come to these meetings. Before I check my city email, I avoid it because I'm going to get an email from a resident saying, I didn't hear back from somebody. I never asserted that $2.5 million for streets wasn't enough. I simply asked the most logical person, the Director of Public Works, is it enough? I never said it wasn't. I simply asked if it was. You said that I asserted that it wasn't enough, and that's not what I said. Oxford Court. There is no documentation of what you claimed tonight, that they were told 3 years ago to submit an insurance claim. If you can provide that, great, but it sure didn't show up in my open records request.
Yeah, because we stood on their front porch.
Yeah, well, it's not
and had a
documented.
conversation.
And that's very convenient because they don't remember that. And when our own city attorney said they probably should sue, yeah, I just said that. So let's talk about the email that you brought up where I said people should just do their job, because you left out a lot.
I put the whole thing up
Oh,
there.
no, you didn't. You left out the whole context, the 10 emails before it. Yeah. You love
those
to
in there.
only pick out what fits your narrative. So this is the email that was sent in the
Jennifer,
evidence.
I'm going to,
This is the email that was sent in the evidence. I would have liked to have done that to you too in your 43 minutes.
you
but-
did. You actually did.
And then I sat back down. And then I listened.
So,
And now I'm going to talk about the 10 emails that were sent before this one, between April 12th, April 12th. Original request from the resident on the website regarding a no parking sign. This was a no parking sign that had been up previously and was taken down. He simply, he sent me an email and said, hey, how do I get this put back up? And he said, could you request it? And I said, it'd probably be more appropriate if you do it because you know exactly where it was. Please submit the request on the website. I don't need to deal with the staff about it. It's the resident's request. I almost always direct residents to do the request themselves. I asked the resident to let me know if he didn't get a response. On April 17th, he advised that he had not gotten a response. I sent an email to Public Works on April 21st as a follow-up, just a simple follow-up. Hey, just checking on this. I know that's really harassing, but I'm just saying, just checking on this. That is when Public Works finally acknowledged the original request from the resident. I sent another email on April 23rd to Public Works, just asking if I could get an update when the resident got an update. Really is all I said. I didn't demand anything. I didn't say you answer to me. I just said, hey, can I get an update when you send the resident an email? I sent another email to the resident on May 1st and asked if they had put the sign back up, and he said they had not. I sent an email on May 1st to Public Works asking for an update because I had not heard anything. It was on that date that I was finally told it was denied. It was also on May 1st. We're going April 12th to May 1st. Time delay. Ms. Recker said 48 hours is pretty much the norm for turnaround in the professional world, since we're going to talk about being professional here. I work in a professional environment. That's the normal turnaround time expectation. On May 1st, the city finally advised the resident of their decision to not put the sign back up. I believe all of this back and forth and numerous emails explain and justify my frustration that was expressed in the email that you actually showed up there. You didn't show the other 10. And I even said in my email, the amount of emails about this topic is ridiculous. And I said that there was micromanaging and people needed to do their jobs because that's what it was. It was micromanagement.
how do you not qualify what you are doing as micromanagement?
It's not micromanagement to expect a response.
Jennifer, it's every single department, every single question. You are right, there are 10 or plus emails. It's nonstop.
Because I kept having...
It's nonstop.
No, I just said when I sent them. I said I would send an email, no response. The resident would send an email. First of all, the resident's the one who requested it, got no response until May 1st. April 12th to May 1st about a sign, about a no parking sign that had been there previously. It's so ridiculous how many emails there were. But let me point this out. In October 2021, a resident complained to the city about Alta Fiber damaging his yard. The city administrator at the time sent an email within a day to Public Works asking them to look into it. Public Works responded that Councilman Hermes had already made them aware of it. The city administrator also followed up several days later asking Public Works if it had been checked on, because it hadn't. Peter Glenn. So I guess Tyson is allowed to send requests directly to Public Works, but I'm not. And a former city administrator is allowed to have an expectation for things to be done in a timely manner, but I'm not allowed to. Tyson also talked directly with Public Works and PD about speed concerns from a resident in March of 2021. It seems that there's very much a double standard here of which council members are allowed to follow up and which council members are not, and which council members are allowed to ask questions to staff and which ones are not. Tyson is, I'm not. I also have some other emails here that I'm going to read.
I'm going to talk
Is this
for a
harassing?
minute. I'm going to talk for a minute, okay?
I know that I reported this last year too, but has the owner of the old Frisch's property been cited for grass? It's pretty bad again. I've had a couple of residents reach out to me, and I sent a picture. No response. In January, Mark said, I'm sending over the speed hum evaluation that was previously completed. Staff has updated the recommendation to include a narrative from peer cities, which we will be discussing this evening. So then I sent an email on May 18th and I said, hey, can I get a copy of the most recent speed bump report that was shared with council in January? I wanted to share it with a resident who had some questions. And we got it, I think last Monday. Here's all my budget questions. I do have some other examples here, and I'm just curious how harassing these are. Hang on, sorry.
I think you're missing the whole point.
No, you're
but that's
missing the
okay.
point.
That's okay.
I sent an email.
Frequency, and it's not just been the last, 6
Yeah.
months.
Oh, I looked at all of my emails.
Tone
for
and
like,
tenor.
This has been 5
you're going to
plus
create,
years.
you're going to say whatever you want to say. It doesn't make it true.
Jennifer, you
It doesn't-
have said whatever you want to say across all your social media platforms. In the council meeting 2 weeks ago, you made quite a bit of a statement.
I did.
And to think that there wasn't going to be any kind of response
I completely expected
is
it.
unreal.
Didn't
And
once
let's
expect you to not
remember, the
respond.
memo was not publicly dispersed. It was sent to only council members, and it was only actually sent once I had a conversation about the tone and tenor of your interactions with staff members with another council member. And I won't call out who it is, but
I'm sure I know.
No, actually, okay. We talked about it. I know, I just didn't want to throw you out. Council didn't have any idea what staff was enduring, okay? And it's my obligation to make sure that we're paying attention to the work environment and the morale, and I'm listening to the staff members, and we're pivoting, we're making adjustments as needed. And it was brought to my attention that council didn't understand what we were enduring. And when you refused to listen to Mark about, just a simple chain of command. I mean, he just wanted you to be able to funnel. He was hearing.
I said I would CC him on emails, and I did.
But you directly told him that you were not going to follow what he was asking of you. He is the city administrator, and he's asking in order to have a streamlined way of communicating in order to protect his staff's workflow. And you completely disregarded what he asked of you.
I said that I would CC him.
You disregarded. Yes or no, did you disregard his email?
I don't need you to yell at me.
No,
You are
I'm not
my
yelling.
mother.
I'm just, you asked me very clearly the last time to simply say yes or no to something.
And I am answering you with what I said. I didn't disregard anything.
Okay. But you did, because you sent 6 different emails that same Sunday to various different department heads.
That's when I have time to do things. Okay. I don't understand what this.
Okay, and all we're asking is that you send them to Mark or send them to me so that we can then funnel them down and make sure that they're properly handled.
But I was sending him emails, and I also wasn't getting responses, which is why I thought.
Can we move on to Ms. Fields, please?
I would love to.
Thank you.
I am so excited that this came to light. I don't know how many people here knows my background. I used to work for the city. I worked for the city for 7 years. I have 2 family members that have been city administrators for the city. I have multiple family members who worked as employees. I have seen the change of the employees' morale substantially. When we went to the Christmas party, not this last year, the year when I first got elected, me and my husband, who had also worked for the city for more than a decade, could not believe the tone change in the employees' morale. Completely different. It used to be where people hung out together. They enjoyed each other's company. Council members came in and like when we were working, we were like, hey, how you doing? We were allowed to talk to them. Now, they're not even allowed to come to our meetings, which is exactly my whole point of everything I've said about the mayor, where you said that they have to work 60 hours a week. They only have to work 60 hours a week if they're micromanaging absolutely everything that has gone through. When I first started in council, I asked for the general ledger in Excel. I'm an accountant. I worked for the finance department here for 3 years. I run an accounting department. It was declined. I got a phone call. It went back and forth, and I realized if I pursue this, she's going to pay the response because there was a reason it was declined.
To be fair, I don't even know what you're talking about. And the insinuation that I micromanage it's just not accurate.
You just showed us. I don't think you realized the between the lines that you just showed us. I'm so glad that you did.
All right.
No,
I'm done.
And very, we do when we get
But you're
information.
insinuating that in your particular request that I shut it down, and that is inaccurate.
Okay, I'm
You
gonna give
are
another
insinuating something that is not accurate.
I'm going to give another example. When I came in as a new council member and we got to meet with all the department heads, you came in and said on every single one of those meetings, we are not allowed to be alone with the employees. Like, we are not allowed to come through and talk to them and just mingle. That is not something you encourage. You actively discourage it. And unfortunately, I know what it's always been like before. I've been here for multiple mayors. So, like, I'm going to use one more example. Diana Nicely, like, when I first started, she had the fire department to come in to talk about the fact that there's a massive turnover in the fire department. Used to, employees stayed here until retirement. They stayed their entire professional career. And we weren't even allowed to hear what they had to say because it ended up being a sales pitch for how wonderful one of your programs was and how horrible it was that she asked for them to present to us. And if anybody doesn't believe me, you can go back and watch the council meeting. It's on record. And there's so many times it's on record. And what's sad is you assume we're not going to have your back. But I don't understand why you assume that. Like, from day one, I came in with the expectation of teamwork. It's always been that way. It's always been where people disagree, but it was respectful. And then it is absolutely not the case. So I'm very glad that you showed that because I know you did it to show her side, but you kind of showed yours too. And I have one more question. Which council member helped you write the documents for the Eons Preserve?
Ms. Reckers?
Was it you?
Yeah, the FAQs.
I apologize on that because it's not the response I thought it was going to be. But
I work with anybody who's willing to work with me.
Can Ms. Nicely, she has questions.
Yes.
She's been having her hand up for quite a while, and everyone else has talked out of turn. So.
May I have the floor?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. I am so shocked. I am so embarrassed how a council member has been addressed in this manner tonight. We should all respect each other, the council members and mayor. I sit up here for several years, and when a council member is saying something that you do not like or agree with, and we all agree to disagree, we're adults and professionals, you make faces, you make fun of somebody, you're sighing. It happens all the time. You can go back on the videos because I get people that ask me, oh, look at her face tonight, what happened? It's very unprofessional. And going back for the last few years, probably the last 8 years, there's been a high turnover in the fire and EMS department and public works. And they did not leave because of Councilman Jasper Lucas. I do know that for a fact. And also, people have been asking the Eons. There seems to still be the gray area of the Eons Preserve. And to clarify, because you're the mayor of the city, so you have the Eons Park project as far as the city is concerned, and you sit on the board for the Eons Preserve. I think that we need to make sure the public, as well as council, is crystal clear. I've had people ask me, Can I buy the properties by Silver Lake and start a Silver Lake preserve and start building out to the park because they want to do that just like Eons is? It just came out of nowhere. Nobody had any inclination. There was an Eons preserve and it intertwines with the city. Has Peter Glenn, which is the project manager of Eons, held meetings that were at Public Works or on the city property? And if so, why wasn't council allowed to be involved with them or the Parks Task Force? Because it seems like we're the last to know until we read it in Link or in the Tribune or on the news, or people say, what's going on in your city? Again, I think it's very unfair to treat Ms. Jasper Lucas as you have tonight. It's very embarrassing for the city, and council is allowed to ask questions. And we don't get the answers. We're held in the dark, and that's why open records. I haven't personally have to open any or file for open records, but I understand why there has been. If we just get the answers we're asking for, and I agree with several of the council members, it appears that you have cut staff off from council. They're afraid to talk to us because of ramifications what the mayor will do. And it's a very hostile environment, and it has nothing to do with the councilwoman, Jasper Lucas. Thank you.
You are making statements that are not based in fact. You are insinuating things that are not accurate. I want to be very clear. All council members communicate with department heads on a regular basis, okay? There's not an issue with the way that you guys interact. I mean, Diana, you just were talking to Kevin the other day. I mean, like, there's no restrictions. There's no issue at all because you show him respect. You show him decency. I mean, Rebecca, you just told us that you had reached out to, was it Raider that you reached out to? Was it Kevin again? Poor Kevin gets blown up all the time. Yeah, so the issue is not with communication with department heads. You have access to these individuals. You can send emails. I'm specifically talking about the tone and tenor that it escalates to. I've never heard you screaming at anybody, okay? I've never heard you talk down or demean or accuse our department heads. I haven't. I think you do a really great job of communicating and bringing things in a professional way. I applaud you for that. And I truly believe that if every one of you operated in that way, that'd be fantastic. That's all we ask for, is just like regular human decency. I did not come here and to have this conversation because I wanted to. I certainly didn't. Oh my gosh. If you think that I want to be in this position, you are wrong. This is purely out of desperation. I sent that memo out of desperation for something to get better because I am being brought these issues by staff. Yes.
It would be different if you would include council members involving with matters in the city, except for just one council member. One council member is basically the one that is involved with everything and everyone else is left out. And that has gone on for years. But thank you for giving me a compliment because I do show respect, and I would expect to be shown respect by you as well.
You are. And the insinuation that one council member only has access, it's not accurate, okay? You can say it doesn't make that it be true. Okay. You've already had a turn to speak.
Yeah, I'm going to take another turn.
We are going to close. We're going to close. We're calling it.
Okay, I'm going to keep talking then. I just want to know if this email was rude. This was to Mark and Kevin on February 7th. Can I get some additional information on the Narrows Road project meeting in February? I noticed a large sign at the corner of Narrows this morning, and that was the first I'd heard about a meeting. I'm sure I'll get questions about it from residents and would like to have the correct info to share. And then Kevin responded in a timely manner and copied Mark on it and explained everything. Was that not professional? Was that hostile? I'm just curious.
Thank you.
Because the only emails that you're bringing up are the ones that I had to ask repeatedly, like over weeks and weeks and weeks, like 10 emails. And it started out with a resident asking for stuff.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Nicely, can I ask you a question? So you said that it's appalling, or however you put it, that I spoke about Ms. Jasper Lucas in this way. Do you think that it is appalling the way that she speaks about me in a public meeting?
I think she asks questions, and she has every right to be asking questions, and she's denied answers.
So do you believe that her insinuations are appropriate?
I'm not on trial and I'm not being questioned by you. I made statements, and I wanted statements for the record, and I'm allowed to make statements, and that's
Sure.
how I felt.
Okay. All right. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried.